Chapter 44. Everything was quiet and peaceful. The forest was vast and boundless. A cool breeze blew past, and a blade-like wave swept through the trees. It brought with it a loud rustling sound as it brushed past, bringing with it pieces of fallen leaves. Bang! In an instant, the sound of flesh colliding rang out in the forest. A white-clothed figure stood at the top of a huge tree. His body was slightly unstable as he swayed left and right. Xiaoyan shook his head slightly and tossed the giddy feeling in his head out of his body. He looked at the spot where he was currently standing and frowned slightly. With a move of his body, he floated down from the top of the tree and landed on the ground. Looking at the huge magical beast corpse on the ground, Xiaoyan curled his lips. This was a rank 6 cloud-splitting leopard. Its forte was its speed and it was extremely agile. Unfortunately, Xiaoyan was practicing the sky extinction steps here. However, Xiaoyan wasn't able to control his speed and direction. As a result, this cloud-splitting leopard was very unlucky and was hit by Xiaoyan. How could a rank 6 magical beast's body be compared to Xiaoyan's, a half-emperor-level expert's body? Hence, in the face of Xiaoyan's frightening physical body and the speed of the sky extinction steps, the rank 6 physical body of the cloud-splitting leopard was killed by Xiaoyan in an extremely strange manner with just one strike. Xiaoyan had a strange expression on his face. He looked at the cloud-splitting leopard that was lying motionless on the ground and bowed slightly. He made an apologetic expression and then disappeared in a flash. Xiaoyan had already left the Lu clan for 5 days. In these 5 days, Xiaoyan had been walking towards the ancient wildlands that Lu Huabai had told him about. He said that there, Xiaoyan would be able to find the method to leave the southern region. When Xiaoyan heard this, he felt a little strange. However, he did not pursue the matter. After leaving the Lu family, Xiaoyan headed towards the ancient savage city and practiced the sky extinction steps. Unfortunately, the sky extinction steps was indeed worthy of being a man-class Do technique. The difficulty of practicing it was not low at all. Even Xiaoyan could be said to have made no progress after these 5 days of practice. The sky annihilation steps was a set of agility Do technique that focused on the training of spatial energy. It did not focus on speed but on nothingness. Once cultivated to greater success, one would be able to ignore the rules of space and walk on the ground as if there was nothing there. Everything that was real would be illusory. In the blink of an eye, one would be able to travel 1,000 miles, surpassing life and death. Outside of 1,000 years, one would be able to chase after illusions. This sky extinction step was truly miraculous. Even its owner back then, Lord Tianju, was unable to completely comprehend it. The heavenly extinction steps mainly relied on the use of space. It allowed the space to move with you and not block your way. The sky extinction steps had a total of 3 stages: wind movement, soaring clouds, and riding the sky. Each stage was further divided into 3 small stages: entry, small success, and great success. The first stage, wind movement, created wind under one's feet. The wind moved with one's feet. When one moved with the wind, one's feet created wind. It appeared as if one was moving with the wind, but in reality, the wind moved with a person, reversing the way of the world and turning it into a wondrous state. The wind movement stage, at the entry stage, stirred up the wind and clouds, causing the world to be in chaos, causing others to be unable to sense the direction of the user's aura. It was extremely miraculous. It borrowed the power of the world and turned it into an aid for the user. It was endlessly miraculous. At the small success stage, the power was even greater. However, it was no longer as chaotic as when one entered the entry stage. Instead, it was orderly, stirring up the wind and clouds to aid the user. At the great success stage, the wind and clouds would move and one's aura would change. It was like the world, causing the opponent to be unable to sense the user. At this moment, the sky extinction steps would truly be opened and become an aid for the practitioner. The soaring clouds realm mainly focused on speed. After entering the soaring clouds great realm, a cultivator's speed in all aspects would sharply increase, increasing the cultivator's overall strength. This made Xiaoyan's heart burn with passion. Unfortunately, the soaring clouds great realm wasn't something that could be easily reached. The soaring clouds great realm mainly pursued the cultivator's ability to control the wind when they were in the wind movement stage. If a cultivator's ability to control the wind was strong enough, then in terms of speed, even wind attribute cultivators of the same level would be able to completely crush their opponents in terms of speed. From this, It could be seen that the sky extinction steps had high requirements for each stage. If one wanted to become stronger, they had to be able to control each stage with ease. The last stage, riding the sky extinction step. This sky extinction step's minimum requirement was to control the power of space. This control was also different from ordinary control. The minimum requirement for this kind of control over the power of space was to comprehend the Great Way of the Void. The Great Way of the Void was one of the tens of thousands of Great Way rules between heaven and earth. Between heaven and earth, for tens of thousands of years, humans had always been pursuing the Great Way of longevity and the Great Way of immortality. Their desire was to live forever and be the only one in heaven and earth. The Great Way of immortality, or in other words the Great Way of heaven. Unfortunately, the Great Way of immortality was extremely difficult. Tens of thousands of years was the final limit. Immortality was just an illusion. Although immortality was difficult, it was possible to attain the Great Way of immortality. Since ancient times, there hadn't been an expert who had attained the Great Way of immortality. However, there wasn't a single Great Way of heaven and earth. Other than the Great Way of immortality, there were all kinds of Great Ways of heaven and earth. Since ancient times, many human experts had discovered many different kinds of Great Ways of heaven and earth. The Great Ways of heaven and earth had existed since ancient times. The ones that people were familiar with were the Great Way of chaos, Great Way of lightning, Great Way of cloud and water, Great Way of wind, Great Way of fire, Great Way of light, Great Way of darkness, Great Way of life, Great Way of death, Great Way of undead, etc. Among them, the Great Way of chaos, Great Way of lightning, Great Way of fire, and Great Way of light had the strongest offensive power. Among them, the Great Way of cloud and water and the Great Way of life had the strongest life force. Generally, they were used for auxiliary purposes and were also quite mysterious. Of course, the other Great Ways also had their own benefits. All of them had endless magical uses and were incomparably mysterious. The use of Great Ways was also a part of one's strength. The strength of one's Great Way of immortality depended on how much the cultivator had comprehended. After half a day, Xiaoyan stopped with a slightly messy body. In this morning, Xiaoyan didn't know how many demonic beasts he had killed. His body was extremely messy. Xiaoyan shook his head helplessly. He leaped up and stood on the top of an ancient tree. He looked at the waves of trees that swept over from afar. Xiaoyan deeply inhaled a breath of fresh air. He opened his arms and closed his eyes, allowing the wind and waves to come at him and blow past his body. The wind blew past, causing Xiaoyan's robe to flutter, emitting waves of whistling wind. Xiaoyan's fingers opened slightly as he felt the air flowing out from between his fingers. Hearing the sound of the wind by his ear, Xiaoyan's legs moved slightly as he adjusted his body's angle. He allowed the wind to hit his body and allowed the ferocious air flow to pass through his fingers. Xiaoyan's robes fluttered and his hair danced wildly. He closed his eyes tightly and quietly listened to everything. He sensed everything around him and the wind on his body. His body repeatedly shifted left and right, changing his position as though he was adjusting something. A moment later, Xiaoyan's eyes abruptly opened. His right leg took half a step forward. This action appeared extremely strange. However, the moment his leg paused, Xiaoyan's body abruptly turned back. In the next instant, a white-clothed figure slowly appeared a few hundred meters away from Xiaoyan. This person was Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan turned his head and glanced at the spot where he had been standing a moment ago. An afterimage gradually disappeared. Xiaoyan smiled and his face revealed a joyous expression. Chapter 45. First layer of the sky extinction steps, wind movement. Xiaoyan smiled faintly. His face revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. That move just now already indicated that he had comprehended a thread of the concept of the Great Way of Wind. It was also because of this that Xiaoyan was able to successfully use the sky extinction steps in that instant. Xiaoyan let out a long breath. He looked at his current location and circulated the dou qi in his body. With a thought, Xiaoyan's body instantly appeared 100 feet away. As he moved repeatedly, Xiaoyan used this opportunity to properly practice for an hour. Although he often lost control, it was much better compared to before. Xiaoyan's body flashed and appeared on the ground. His body shook slightly and stabilized his swaying body. Letting out a breath, the corners of Xiaoyan's mouth revealed a smile. After a long while, he had finally more or less grasped it. The sky extinction steps still required wind to practice. Only in this way would he be able to experience the true essence of the wind movement stage and reach the great mastery stage. Currently, the sky extinction steps could be considered as having officially started practicing. This also meant that he was not far from entering the door. At that time, even if the old flame demon ghost personally chased after him, Xiao Yan would likely possess the ability to completely suppress him. Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed. His expression instantly became incomparably cold, causing the surrounding space to emit waves of dark and cold wind whistling sounds. Xiao Yan's expression suddenly relaxed. His mouth muttered softly, "Old flame demon ghost, although I don't know how you know me, since you have come to provoke me and I let you escape the last time, there will definitely not be a next time." In the blink of an eye, a day had passed and it was already the morning of the second day. Xiao Yan woke up from his training. He looked at the sky and the corners of his mouth lifted into a smile. It was as if the thing that he had been waiting for a long time had finally arrived. Today's weather was not very good. Dark clouds that were not very thick drifted in the sky. However, these dark clouds caused a trace of surprise to flash across Xiao Yan's eyes. Xiao Yan's figure moved and appeared in the sky in the blink of an eye. Above his head was the gloomy dark cloud. Xiao Yan's arrival appeared to have caused the originally irritable dark clouds to become a little angry. When Xiao Yan arrived, rumbling sounds rang out from the dark clouds. Xiao Yan smiled. He lifted his eyes and looked around. The area within a radius of a few miles was covered by the dark clouds. Although the dark clouds were very thin, it was enough for Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's figure moved, and his figure, which was already standing in the sky, rose even higher, straight to the top of the sky. Boom! Before his figure arrived, the heavenly thunder raged. Following a rumbling sound that resounded across the sky, a not very strong lightning snake furiously struck down towards Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's expression did not change. His figure rushed forward, and his arm bent upwards. His palm tightly clenched into a fist, and met the furious lightning with a punch. Boom! When the two collided, a dazzling white light flashed. Following which, a thunderous sound that resounded across the entire sky shook the horizon. The white light flashed, and Xiao Yan's figure appeared. However, the current Xiao Yan was no longer at his previous position. Instead, he flew directly below the dark clouds and stood proudly. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth was lifted into an arc. He glanced at the thunderclouds above his head that were repeatedly churning and emitting waves of rumbling thunder because of him. Xiao Yan faintly smiled. He raised his hands, and the seals in his hands began to change. Looking at the seals, it was the cultivation seals for the sky annihilation steps. As numerous seals were formed in Xiao Yan's hand, a dark wind that carried waves of chilliness blew across the sky. If one were to say that this wind was not caused by Xiao Yan, it was likely that no one would believe it. However, after only one night, Xiao Yan was able to summon the cold wind when he once again used this heaven-end steps. This did indeed cause people to feel disbelief. When Xiao Yan saw this, a smile appeared on his face. The seals in his hands paused, and his figure instantly disappeared. In the next instant, 100 feet away, Xiao Yan's figure suddenly flashed and disappeared again. Xiao Yan's playful manner seemed to have angered the churning thundercloud. The thundercloud churned and emitted waves of rumbling sounds. When Xiao Yan's figure appeared again, a thunderbolt furiously struck down. In just an instant, Xiao Yan was turned into nothingness. The dark clouds rumbled and rumbled like mocking laughter. In the next instant, Xiao Yan's figure once again appeared 100 feet away. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth curled into a smile, as he indifferently looked at the dark clouds above his head. Xiao Yan's figure moved and disappeared. However, the dark wind that covered the sky suddenly surged, as if it had turned into a gust of wind, and whizzed in a certain direction. In the next instant, Xiao Yan's figure suddenly flashed, and his position was exactly where the dark wind was heading. Xiao Yan felt the gust of wind sweeping over his body, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. He slightly closed his eyes and muttered in a low voice, "Wind rising, cloud gathering momentum, I can finally do it now." Wind rising, cloud gathering momentum, will depend on today's luck. Wind rises and clouds surge, wind moves minor success. Wind and clouds agitate, soaring cloud success. Heaven trampling might, sky splitting ultimate steps. These sentences were the ones that appeared when he was comprehending the heaven annihilation steps yesterday. Presumably, These were the cultivation experiences of those who had succeeded in cultivating the heaven annihilation steps in the past. They were intentionally left in this scroll so that the later generations could easily cultivate it. In these sentences, each sentence corresponded to a realm. Wind rising, cloud gathering, momentum. Small accomplishment referred to the wind rising realm. It required a cultivator to bring about the wind and clouds when practicing the sky-splitting ultimate steps. Wind rising, cloud gathering, momentum. Cloud gathering, momentum. Wind rising, cloud gathering, momentum. When a cultivator truly achieved this step, then the wind rising realm of the sky-splitting ultimate steps could be considered to have succeeded in learning it. Wind rising, cloud gathering, momentum. Sky-splitting ultimate steps. This sentence was even simpler and easier to understand. Wind rising, cloud gathering, momentum was only the momentum of the sky-splitting ultimate steps. How could momentum be of great use in battle? Wind rising, cloud gathering, momentum was the true power of the sky-splitting ultimate steps. The sky-splitting ultimate steps borrowed the momentum of the wind and clouds to move unhindered between heaven and earth, gathering wind and clouds, and combining heavenly lightning to suppress the enemy. It could be said to be using the sky-splitting ultimate steps to suppress the enemy. It had both offensive and defensive capabilities, and its power could shake the heavens. The last sentence was not explained in detail on the scroll. Perhaps it was only the speculation of that senior, and Xiao Yan did not delve into it. However, just from the surface meaning of those words, if the sky extinction steps were to be cultivated to the great success stage, its power would not be small. Perhaps it would really be like what was described on the scroll, the might of trampling the heavens, the might of the sky-splitting steps. Chapter 46. Xiao Yan's figure wandered back and forth within the thunderclouds. His footsteps did not seem to be methodical. However, it was this unmethodical footsteps that allowed Xiao Yan to wander freely within the thunderclouds. The thunderclouds churned, the wind howled angrily, lightning struck, and the wind and clouds surged. The thin, cloud-like dark clouds were already unable to restrain their anger. Heavenly lightning struck continuously, falling crazily. Between the thunderclouds, shadows were constantly smashing. Xiao Yan closed his eyes slightly, a smile on his lips. His face was calm. He naturally knew that this cloud was angry. However, his expression did not change. With his hands behind his back, he moved his feet slightly, passing through the dark, thick fog. At least, it was not much for Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's body moved slowly. His footsteps gently shifted, perhaps to the left or to the right. His body followed and swayed gently. As he swayed and moved, he carried waves of wild wind that swept through the thin dark clouds, churning unceasingly within the thunderclouds. Xiao Yan's seemingly playful behavior caused the heavenly lightning to strike wildly. Roars of anger sounded continuously, and bolts of heavenly lightning struck down furiously. However, it was a pity that Xiao Yan dodged every single one of them. Behind every single time, there was a mysterious heavenly law. It seemed like luck, but it was also mysterious. Finally, the heavenly lightning this time seemed to have a plan. As Xiao Yan continued to move left and right, a lightning cage slowly appeared, trapping Xiao Yan within. It was as if it wanted to use the power of the heavens to suppress Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's expression did not change. The corner of his mouth still held a faint smile, as if all of this had nothing to do with him. His face was as calm as the wind and clouds. Xiao Yan's calm expression seemed to have triggered the heavenly lightning. The lightning cage was like a circular iron cage, trapping Xiao Yan within, emitting bursts of thunder. All of a sudden, lightning flashed in all directions. Bolts of lightning that were as thick as an adult's thigh shot towards Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's face was calm as he looked at the lightning bolts that were approaching him. He did not move at all. However, just as the lightning bolts were about to hit him, Xiao Yan's body turned. His feet crossed on the spot, and the wind and clouds swirled under his feet. He turned in a very strange posture and circled around on the spot. The lightning bolts that were heading towards Xiao Yan were also very strange. They circled around the direction that Xiao Yan had just circled around before shooting towards the distant sky. Then, they exploded with a loud bang, emitting bursts of dazzling lightning, and forth before disappearing. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth was slowly lifted into a smile. His body continued to roam within the furious thunder clouds. While Xiao Yan's, a group of Lu clan, a group of people in the Azure Sun City, and the Lu clan. There were not many people, only 3 of them. However, they caused the entire Lu clan to be extremely shocked. This was because they were from the Azure Cloud Mansion. The three of them were quite strong. At the very least, they could be considered top experts in this area. Among them, the strongest one had reached the level of a 6-star Dozun. The other two were 5-star Dozuns. Their strength could be considered top in this area. At this moment, the three of them were standing side by side in the Lu clan's meeting hall. The 6-star Dozun originally wanted to sit on the main seat in the hall. However, after thinking about it in his heart, he ultimately gave up on this idea. Lu Huabai stood up from the clan leader's seat. He extended his left hand and pointed at the row of 3 chairs on the left side of the hall. His face carried a smile as he spoke to the three of them. "The three of you, please take your seats." His words had just sounded when the eyes of everyone in the hall hardened. At this moment, there were already quite a number of people standing in their seats in the hall. The only thing missing was for the clan leader to tell them to take their seats. However, at this moment, everyone's eyes were instantly dull. One could see a beautiful snow-white cat standing in front of the first chair on the left. At the very least, it was a cat in everyone's eyes. At this moment, one of the cat's paws was stepping on a cushion. Its face was eagerly looking at everyone as it blinked its bright eyes. The cat pulled back its paws and pulled the cushion in front of it. Its body rose, its butt twisted, and it sat on the cushion in front of everyone's eyes. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, it retracted its 4 claws, coiled its tail in front of its body, and shrunk its neck. Then, a series of gurgling sounds rang out. The sound wasn't loud, but in this silent hall, it was indeed the loudest sound. Soon after, this gurgling sound was drowned out by the sound of saliva being swallowed. The corner of the eyes of the Lu clan's clan leader, Lu Huabai, and the 6-star Dozun, who was the leader of the three, twitched. After which, the 6-star Dozun frowned slightly. He looked at Lu Huabai, who was standing in front of the main seat. His face revealed a displeased expression as he let out a cold snort. That 6-star Dozun looked at Lu Huabai and coldly laughed. "Clan leader Lu, your cat is really not afraid of strangers. You have raised it well." Lu Huabai's expression changed slightly when he heard this. Lu Xinqing's expression was also ugly. This white cat was something that Xiao Yan had asked them to take care of. What the cat did had nothing to do with them. Moreover, even though it was said to be taking care of it, it was actually just leaving the cat in their Lu clan. They did not know what Xiao Yan's intention was. However, he had suddenly said that they belonged to the Lu clan. How could they accept this? The change in expression on Lu Huabai's face was naturally seen by the 3 experts from the Azure Cloud Mansion. The 3 of them looked at each other and exchanged glances. The 6-star Dozun, who was the leader, nodded in an undetectable manner. After which, he stopped moving. Lu Huabai was just about to open his mouth to say something when he saw that 6-star Dozun emit a cold laugh. He waved his sleeve and coldly said, "Why? Are you afraid in your heart? Weren't you very confident a few days ago? You actually dared to kill an elite Dozun from my Azure Cloud Mansion. Qu'est-ce? You are really bold. Where is that elder from your Lu clan? Isn't he very strong? Ask him to come out. I want to see just how strong he is." His eyes drifted in all directions as he spoke. It was as though he was afraid that something would suddenly appear. However, the more he spoke, the more arrogant his laughter became. This laughter caused everyone present to frown slightly. They exchanged glances with each other. Their eyes were filled with fear when they looked at the 6-star Dozun. However, no one other than Lu Xinqing and Lu Huabai noticed that everyone present felt their hearts palpitating because of the 6-star Dozun. The cat, which was originally snoring, had already woken up at this moment. Its bright eyes were slightly opened, revealing 2 thin black lines. Its bright eyes were filled with an endless chill. It caused one to feel as though one was within an ancient ice block. It was incomparably dark and cold. Chapter 47. Please recommend me. Please recommend me. Qingyang City, Lu Mansion, Discussion Hall. Arrogant and wanton laughter endlessly reverberated within the palace. Other than the 2 people in the palace and Lu Huabai and Lu Xinqing, whose gazes were attracted by the white cat, the other people all had faces full of fear. These 3 people were not people that their Lu clan could contend with. At the very least, without Xiao Yan, their Lu clan was unable to contend with them. After the laughter, that 6-star Dozun coldly smiled as he looked at Lu Huabai. His eyes were filled with ridicule. Lu Huabai, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes. He tilted his head to the left and looked at the six-star Dozun with an indifferent expression. He gently turned his head and looked at the first elder. The first elder noticed the gaze that Lu Huabai had shot over. The corner of his mouth moved slightly, carrying an unknown arc immediately. He shook his head in a manner that could not be detected and ignored Lu Huabai. Lu Huabai's eyes once again turned to that six-star Dozun. Both of his eyes narrowed and the corner of his mouth was lifted. He revealed a smile that did not appear to be as harmonious as it appeared. This also caused that six-star Dozun to frown. He turned his head to look at the other two elite Dozuns beside him. Before he could express any thoughts, Lu Huabai's voice was suddenly emitted. You are an expert from the Azure Cloud Mansion. I think that you have come to the southwestern border to search for a new elite Dozun, right? Haha. Unfortunately, my Lu clan does not have one. As for the expert that you have mentioned, haha, the old me also does not know where he is. The eyes of the three experts from the Azure Cloud Mansion suddenly shot toward Lu Huabai after these words were uttered. Their eyes stared intently at Lu Huabai. The six-star Dozun, who was the leader, narrowed his eyes. He coldly snorted and said, Clan head Lu, I think that it is better for you to speak honestly. That expert has entered your Lu mansion in front of the eyes of everyone in Qingyang City. Now that you say that you do not know, do you treat the three of us as fools? These words were neither light nor heavy. However, everyone could sense the pressure that belonged to an elite Dozun instantly spread throughout the entire hall when these words left their mouths. This caused everyone to feel as though they were unable to breathe. Humph! A cold snort was emitted. Other than the two elite Dozuns, everyone in the hall had a sudden change in expression. Their faces began to flush red. Even their breathing had become a little rough. Lu Hua and Bai Chong's faces were flushed, and the veins on their foreheads bulged. They endured the pressure, gritted their teeth, and said with difficulty, Your Excellency's way of doing things is a bit too much. That elder has indeed come to my Lu family. However, when an expert does something, does he need to ask for instructions from me, Lu Huabai, the clan head of a small family? Not to mention that I don't know where that senior is right now. Even if I did, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to do anything to him. That six-star Dozun from the Azure Cloud Mansion involuntarily frowned when he heard this. Could it be that this person really possessed some ability to gain the support of the members of the Lu clan? The old man swiftly exchanged glances with the other two. That six-star Dozun once again emitted a cold snort. Only then did everyone pant as they looked at the three of them. They did not dare to relax even a little. However, no one noticed that the large white cat, which had been quietly lying on the cushion, had nodded its head in an extremely human-like manner at this moment. A pair of bright eyes looked at Lu Huabai before closing once again. After which, it fell into a deep sleep. It was as though everything in this large hall had nothing to do with it. Lu Huabai inhaled a deep breath of air. His eyes once again recovered its calmness. He smiled, looked at the six-star Dozun, and laughed. Haha, since you have come from so far away, you are definitely not here for my Lu clan, right? You are definitely here for the Wu clan. That ancestor of the Wu clan is indeed extraordinary. He is actually able to break through at such an age. It is indeed a blessing from the heavens. Lu Huabai's originally praising tone changed when he spoke until this point. He paused for a moment before opening his mouth to continue. Unfortunately, although his strength has increased, he has become muddle-headed. He dares to offend anyone. He clearly knows that Elder has stayed in my Lu clan, but he still recklessly barged in. In the end, before he could even display the strength that he had painstakingly trained, Tisk. Life is really fragile. Lu Huabai sighed. However, he looked at the six-star Dozun and quickly opened his mouth to speak. Sir, you must place your life as the most important. You can enjoy all the blessings as long as you are alive. If you lose your life, what can you do even if you have riches? That six-star Dozun was non-committal as he coldly snorted upon hearing this. The two elite Dozuns beside him frowned slightly upon seeing this. Such a situation was not something that they were willing to see. Once the Wu clan was destroyed, this Green Sun City would become the sole hegemony of the Lu clan. In the future, the Lu clan would definitely rise. At that time, the Lu clan would definitely be able to obtain many benefits. The ultimate goal of the three of them coming to Green Sun City this time around was to use the matter of the Wu clan to suppress the Lu clan and get the Lu clan to agree that they would hand over a portion of the benefits and resources that they obtained in the future. However, from the looks of it, the Lu clan was planning to use force to reject them. In this way, would it not mean that they had made this trip for nothing? They had already waited outside of Green Sun City for many days. However, they did not dare to enter because they had sensed Xiao Yan's terrifying aura. This continued until a couple of days ago when the three of them were unable to detect Xiao Yan's aura. In order to be safe, the three of them had endured for a couple of days before entering. It was unexpected that they had been defeated by that mysterious expert. The three of them exchanged a couple of glances with each other. A moment later, that six-star Do Zun finally steeled his heart. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Lu Huabai, who was seated in the main seat. His eyes were overbearing and sharp. They were filled with a ruthless expression. Humph! The old me was nearly frightened by you. What a great clan head of the Lu clan. What a great clan. You actually dare to tease the old me. You actually used a trash who had already fled to scare the old me. You have really eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. Lu Huabai. No matter what happens today, you must give the old me a satisfactory explanation. Otherwise, that six-star Do Zun's face was filled with ruthlessness. His expression was ferocious and murderous aura surged all over his body. He was just about to continue speaking when he was suddenly silenced. His entire body was stunned as cold perspiration appeared on his head. He did not even dare to breathe loudly. His eyes were filled with a horror that could not be removed. Otherwise, what do you want to do? Destroy the Lu clan? Kill that trash that you have mentioned that has fled? Or do you want to capture him and slowly torture him so that the members of the Lu clan can see just how useless this savior of theirs is? Humph! A mere six-star Do Zun actually dares to say such big words. You really don't know the meaning of life and death. The expressions of the three people below the stage changed drastically when these words were uttered. They knelt down together with a bang, and kowtowed as they admitted their mistake. Chapter 48. Please recommend me. Please recommend me. Humph. Why? You don't want to attack me now? A cold snort was emitted. The entire place was silent. No one dared to make a sound. One could see three white-robed old men kneeling in the middle of the large hall. They were repeatedly kowtowing and admitting their mistakes. The eyes of the six-star Do Zun, who was the leader, suddenly shrunk when he heard these words. His entire body trembled. A moment later, he finally opened his mouth and spoke with a trembling voice. Say, Elder, you must be joking. How would the three of us dare to have such daring thoughts? Elders, strength is monstrous. How would the three of us dare to touch it? That six-star Do Zun swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His words were spoken with great difficulty. His breathing was tense, but it was extremely slow. It was as though he was afraid of angering this elder. That person coldly laughed when he heard this. This caused the entire large hall to shake 3 times. The large hall shook and dust that had accumulated over the years was brought down from the beams. The dust drifted down, causing the entire large hall to appear like celestial dust clouds had scattered over the world. However, the strange thing was, the dust that was falling from the sky actually landed on the 3 powerhouses from the Azure Cloud Mansion. It caused them to raise their brows when they saw this. After the dust fell, the interior of the hall became clear. When one inhaled a breath of air, one would not feel any dust floating in the air. It felt incomparably fresh. The carpet of the large hall appeared to be very clean. There were no traces of dust. Moreover, if one were to carefully observe it, one would discover some new clues. At this moment, not only was the carpet not dirty, but it was also much cleaner than before. The entire carpet appeared incomparably bright, as though it was new. Everyone's eyes swept around. In the end, other than Lu Huabai and Lu Xinqing, everyone else's eyes were red. Threads of crystal-clear tears flowed under their eyes. They were just short of a small opportunity to burst out of their eyes. Even Lu Huabai and Lu Xinqing did not have much of a change on their faces. However, if one were to carefully observe, one would be able to clearly see that their cheeks were telling everyone the emotions in their hearts. The only ones who were unable to laugh were the 3 people from the Azure Cloud Mansion who were kneeling in the middle of the large hall. Their bodies were trembling for some unknown reason. At this moment, The three of them looked extremely comical on the surface. The three of them were kneeling in the hall. Their robes were already colorless. Their backs were covered in a thick layer of dust that was as thick as snow. The three of them were covered in dust and grime, and they looked extremely miserable. If one were to look down from above, they would not be able to see anyone. They would only be able to see 3 mounds of dirt in the middle of the hall. At this moment, the faces of the 3 people were ashen. They clenched their teeth, and the sound of grinding teeth came from their mouths. Their faces were filled with anger as they knelt on the ground. Their eyes were filled with unwillingness. Boom! All of a sudden, a strong gust of wind shot towards the 3 of them, startling them. Hastily, they stood up and circulated their battle chi to meet the incoming attack. Boom! With a muffled sound, the 3 of them were blasted out of the hall. They rolled on the ground a few times in a sorry state before they managed to stop themselves with great difficulty. The 3 of them stopped and stood up. The eyes of the 6-star Do Zun leading the group were bright red. He stared at the large hall that was shrouded by gray fog and furiously roared. Elder, what is the meaning of this? You have already toyed with the 3 of us, yet you still want to kill us? You have really failed to live up to your name as an elder. Hey, brat, you have become bold. Earlier, the old me was merely being kind and wanted to help the 3 of you get rid of the dust on your bodies. Unexpectedly, the 3 of you actually stood up and blocked my attack. Everyone curled their lips when these words were spoken. Based on the strength of the gust of wind earlier, it was obvious that the other party wanted to kill the 3 of them. Yet, at this moment, the other party was blaming them for blocking it. How could they not be on guard in the face of death? Who knew if the other party wanted to kill them? If the other party really wanted to kill them and they did not block it, they would have lost their lives in vain. Who would do such a stupid thing? Even Lu Huabai and Lu Xinqing curled the corners of their mouths. They looked at each other but did not say anything. The corners of the eyes of the 3 Azure Cloud Mansion's elders twitched when they heard this. In the end, the other party was still blaming them. Before the 3 of them could react, the mysterious elder once again opened his mouth and spoke. Ugh, however, it is fine if you want to block it. You actually slandered a good person and said that I am unworthy of being called an elder, and that I do not have a benevolent heart. Now, tell me, am I worthy or am I unworthy? Ha! The moment his words sounded, the entire place became quiet. The 3 Do Zuns from the Azure Cloud Mansion instantly felt an unknown pressure surging toward them. In just an instant, it covered the 3 of them, causing them to feel an incomparably terrifying pressure assault their hearts. They were incomparably shocked. The eyes of the 6-star Do Zun, who was the leader, suddenly shrunk to the size of a needle tip. He ignored the expressions of the other 2 beside him and hurriedly opened his mouth to speak. Elder lives up to your reputation. You have helped the Azure Cloud Mansion eliminate those who do not abide by the rules. You uphold righteousness and help the weak. You are naturally worthy of being called an elder. These words were spoken in a righteous manner and possessed the demeanor of a benevolent person. However, everyone who heard it only curled their lips and sighed. They turned their heads to one side and no longer looked at him. That 6-star Do Zun's old face also turned red. His face was slightly hot. However, he merely turned his eyes and did not say anything. It was a long while later before that elder opened his mouth and spoke again with a smile. Ha 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 ha. Since this is the case, I will forget about it. You can just randomly compensate me with something that you scolded me earlier. Is that all right? The 3 of them hurriedly smiled and nodded in agreement when they heard this. That elder quickly laughed after seeing this. In that case, the old me shall not ask for anything more. I think that all of you will not be able to take out anything good. In that case, I shall be a little more benevolent. All of you can randomly give me 500,000 spirit coins. These words were spoken in an extremely indifferent manner. However, the faces of everyone present twitched wildly when they heard it. 500,000 spirit coins? Casually taking it? What did he treat spirit coins as? Were spirit coins so worthless? Everyone was speechless. The 3 Do Zuns from the Azure Cloud Mansion were even more speechless. The 3 of them faced each other and shook their heads. 500,000 spirit coins was an astronomical figure to any one of them. Even if all 3 of them were to take it out together, the pressure would still be quite great. The 3 of them exchanged a few words. In the end, they still frowned. Their faces were filled with helplessness. It was a long while later before that six-star Dozun finally bit his lips and slowly opened his mouth. Elder, this 500,000 spirit coins is indeed a little too much. Huh? You still find it too much? I think that all of you are unwilling. The three of you only have a total of 500,000 spirit coins. Compared to your little lives, I am already very benevolent. Chapter 49. Please recommend me. Please recommend me. Everyone's faces twitched when they heard this. The three Dozuns from the Azure Cloud Mansion were also speechless for a long time. Benevolence. He actually dared to say such words. 500,000 spirit coins. It was already not bad for each of them to have over 100,000 spirit coins. This would require years of accumulation. However, this fellow actually asked for 500,000 spirit coins. What did he think spirit coins were? The three of them faced each other and frowned. Their hearts were spinning rapidly. However, there was nothing they could do. The six-star Dozun could only muster his courage and speak to the mysterious elder after hesitating for a moment. Elder, the three of us are indeed not wealthy enough. We are unable to take out so many spirit coins. The three of us only have 370,000 spirit coins. I hope that elder can give us some time. We will quickly return to the Azure Cloud Mansion and retrieve the spirit coins. We will definitely send them to elder as soon as possible. Humph. Do you think I will believe you? Can you still come back after leaving? Humph. A voice that was filled with anger sounded. The three of them immediately felt chills all over their bodies. Their bodies involuntarily trembled. Just as they were about to reply, the voice sounded again. All right, Humph. I feel annoyed when I see all of you. Scram. If you dare to cause trouble in the Lu clan again, Humph. There won't be a next time. The three of them quickly kowtowed and thanked the elder when they heard this. They hurriedly turned around and were about to leave when the mysterious voice sounded again. Wait. Leave the spirit coins behind. The three of them no longer dared to delay after hearing this. After leaving the spirit coins behind, they quickly left the Lu clan and Azure Sun City. They fled for their lives toward the Azure Cloud Mansion. In the Lu clan's discussion hall, Lu Huabai and Lu Xinqing had asked their clan members to leave. Everyone knew what the two of them wanted to do. Hence, they cooperated and quickly left the hall. The two of them turned their heads. However, their eyes hardened. The white cat was nowhere to be seen in the hall. The hall was empty and there was no one else in sight. Only the cushion that still had some warmth was lying quietly on the ground. Lu Huabai shook his head gently. He stepped forward and was about to pick up the cushion when his eyes narrowed. A few strands of white hair were left on the cushion. Originally, Lu Huabai didn't pay much attention to it. However, just as he was about to pick up the cushion, he seemed to have discovered something. It was unknown whether the falling white hairs were intentional or not, but they actually formed a sentence. The meaning within the sentence caused Lu Huabai to reveal a joyous smile. That sentence read, "Not bad. Your Lu family is worthy of his help. I think highly of you." The matter of the Lu family had come to an end, but there was still another matter that had just begun. This was a mountain range. The mountains rose and fell like giant beasts crawling on the ground. Waves of beast roars accompanied the wilderness of the giant mountains. The mountain was filled with fog. What was strange was that the fog was actually red. There were puddles of water left on the ground where the fog was dense. However, the color of those puddles of water caused one to feel a sinister feeling. The reason for that was because the puddles of water were also red. The chilly wind blew, causing the puddles of water to ripple in all directions. Waves of water spread out and formed the shape of an ordinary smiling face. When paired with the bright red color, it appeared incomparably evil. Whoosh! The dense fog in the forest was forcibly torn apart, leaving behind a vacuum space. Not long later, it once again closed. A human figure had already flashed for a long time in the less than 1,000th of the time just now. A few hours later, deep within the mountain range, at the end of the blood-colored fog, in front of a small valley, a human figure with a sinister mask on his face slowly appeared. Black fog lingered around his body. Under the mask, a pair of sinister old eyes looked at the valley. He lowered his head and looked at the black fog that was not very dense. Within his eyes, a malicious expression was revealed. After a good while, the human figure with black fog lingering around his body moved and flew towards the valley. He left behind a malicious oath where he stood. Xiao Yan. When I find you next time and complete my mission, I will tear your body into 10,000 pieces and avenge my heavy injuries. This person was actually the old flame demon ghost who escaped when Xiao Yan was not paying attention back then. Not long after, the old flame demon ghost arrived in front of a pitch-black hall. 300 meters away from the hall was an energy barrier that could be seen clearly from the inside out, tightly protecting the entire hall. From the outside, one could not see any difference between this place and the mountain range. The corners of the old flame demon ghost's mouth curled into a smile as he looked at the pitch-black door. His hands rapidly formed a series of profound seals. The surface of the pitch-black door flickered with a faint light. In just a moment, the door opened with a creak. A pitch-black tunnel appeared before the old flame demon ghost's eyes. That tunnel was extremely dark, as if even the space inside was pitch-black and sticky. When one looked at it, one would feel a sense of fear surging from the depths of one's soul. It was as if that was not a tunnel that led to the depths of the hall, but a yellow springs road that led to hell. It caused one's soul to tremble and tremble. The old flame demon ghost opened his sinister old eyes and inhaled a deep breath of air. He once again looked at the pitch-black tunnel. Even though he had walked an unknown number of times, a thick feeling of death would surge from the bottom of his heart each time he saw this pitch-black tunnel. If not for the normal experience of walking through this tunnel in the past still reminding him in his mind, it was likely that the current him would have already turned around and fled. After calming himself, he once again inhaled a deep breath of air. After which, he slowly exhaled. His throat rolled as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His heavy footsteps slowly stepped forward, walking into the pitch-black tunnel. After he entered the hall, the door to the hall was once again slowly shut with a creaking sound. This place had also turned into a dark and gloomy forest. It was no different from the rest of the world. A wave of heavy footsteps sounded. A human figure gradually appeared at the entrance of the pitch-black tunnel. This person was the old flame demon ghost. Clang, clang, clang. Accompanied by the sound of metal clanging, pitch-black chains engraved with mysterious runes instantly sealed the exit of the passage. A couple of black-clothed human figures whose faces could not be clearly seen appeared at the entrance of the tunnel. Each of them held a chain in their hands, prepared to deal with any sudden situation. The human figures appeared from the tunnel. Everyone's bodies flashed when they saw them, disappearing from their original spots along with the chains. The old flame demon ghost ignored the few people who had disappeared in a flash. Clearly, he was already incomparably clear about this. The old flame demon ghost exhaled. His eyes contained some fear as he turned his head to look at the pitch-black tunnel. He did not say anything. Instead, he gently lifted his feet and walked into the hall. At the same time, in a mountainous area extremely far away from this place, a green-clothed old man with white hair and a beard was looking at the few green mountains in the distance with a relaxed smile. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile as he opened his mouth and sighed. This old man is Yuan Qing. I have finally returned. Chapter 50. A vast mountain range, a thick blood-colored fog, and a dark forest. Ta-ta-ta-ta. Following a series of rhythmic footsteps, a figure shrouded in black fog slowly walked forward in a pitch-black hall. The hall was pitch black and one's field of vision was less than 30 meters. The figure looked straight ahead, completely unaffected by the endless darkness. There were no ripples in his eyes. The seemingly slow footsteps were extremely fast. In just a moment, the figure had already reached the end of the large hall. The old flame demon ghost stopped and raised his eyes to the front. It was still pitch black as always, without a trace of light. Everything here looked so empty. His body leaned forward slightly, and he continued to move forward. Soon, the old flame demon ghost stopped again and looked around. This was actually another pitch-black tunnel. The pitch-black space made one wonder if it was an illusion or something else. The space here was actually extremely dense. There was even a sense of stickiness. Even when he breathed, he felt as if he was inhaling water into his lungs. The old flame demon ghost took a deep breath of the sticky air and slowly exhaled. Just as he was about to speak, another old voice sounded. Old flame demon ghost? Why are you back? As soon as his voice fell, he let out a soft exclamation and said, That's right. I see that your blood chi is weak and your soul energy is weak. None of the subordinates you brought with you survived. Could it be because of that old fellow Yuan Qing? The old flame demon ghost snorted coldly when he heard this. He twisted his neck angrily and replied, "Humph. It would be great if it was only that fellow, Yuan Qing. If that was the case, I could have killed him that day." The person whose location was unknown raised his eyebrows slightly and spoke again. "This means that that old fellow, Yuan Qing, still has helpers? Could it be that they sent someone else?" Before he finished speaking, he shook his head and said with a frown, "That shouldn't be the case." "But that shouldn't be the case. If they had sent someone over, the headquarters would have informed us. But it doesn't seem to be the case." "Humph. All right, I won't talk to you for now. I'm going to see the hallmaster first. Once I'm done, the hallmaster will inform you." Just as he was about to step into the passageway, he suddenly paused. A black figure wrapped in a black robe appeared in front of the old flame demon ghost. The black-clothed figure let out a cold laugh and said to the old flame demon ghost, "Lord Palace Master is not someone you can meet just because you want to. Lord Palace Master has already informed me that he is going into closed-door training. You will not be able to see him for at least a few months." As he spoke, he smiled and glanced at the flame demon old ghost. "Moreover, Lord Hallmaster went into seclusion 10 days ago. He said that we are not to disturb his seclusion unless something major happens. You should be aware of Lord Hallmaster's temper." "Humph humph. Do you think that it is possible for you to meet him?" The old flame demon ghost's anxious heart relaxed when he heard these words. He was naturally aware of the temper of the hall chief. No one could go against him once he spoke. However, at this moment, as long as he said his last sentence, even if he disturbed Lord Palace Master's seclusion, the hallmaster would definitely not punish him. Therefore, the old flame demon ghost had a mocking smile on his face as he looked at the black-clothed figure in front of him. He slowly said, "Since that is the case, may I request the palace protector to make way for this old man? This old man has an urgent matter to report to Lord Palace Master." The brows of the black-clothed figure under the black robe were tightly knitted together when he heard this. He coldly snorted and said, "I don't believe that there is something major that can cause you to offend Lord Palace Master like this. Are you really not afraid of death?" The last few words of the black-clothed person were especially emphasized, causing one to feel very uncomfortable after hearing them. However, the old flame demon ghost coldly laughed and said, "Die? Humph humph. I advise you to get out of the way as soon as possible. Otherwise, once the opportunity passes, it is not certain who will be the one to die. You must be careful of this old life of yours. It will be best if your soul is not scattered in the end." The black-clothed person suddenly raised his head when he heard this. Flames of fury rose in his sinister eyes. After letting out a heavy cold snort, the black-clothed person's figure flashed and disappeared in front of the old flame demon ghost. The old flame demon ghost coldly laughed. He lifted his foot and walked into the tunnel. A moment later, the old flame demon ghost finally walked out of the pitch-black tunnel with a somewhat numb expression. The old flame demon ghost appeared in a spacious large hall. The difference between this place and the outside was simply the difference between heaven and earth. It was as if one was the underworld and the other was the immemorial immortal realm. The first thing that entered one's eyes in this place was a layer of hazy white fog that lingered in the large hall like the drifting immortal chi. Together with the pitch-black tunnel behind the old flame demon ghost, it was as if one had arrived in a different world. The walls of the large hall were made of sparkling and translucent white jade that emitted a lustrous white light. With a single glance, one could tell that this jade was definitely not an ordinary item. In the center of the large hall, there were 3 transparent and colorless balls of light suspended in the air. They emitted a lustrous light that illuminated the entire large hall. The balls of light appeared ordinary, as if they were only used for illumination. However, from the waves of energy ripples that were faintly emitted from them, one could tell that these balls of light were definitely not ordinary. If Xiao Yan was present, he would be able to recognize with a single glance that these 3 balls of light were surprisingly the spiritual sources that the Hall of Souls had collected in the past. The white hazy fog was emitted from these 3 balls of light. The white hazy fog was actually waves of pure spiritual sources. However, the old flame demon ghost seemed to have already become accustomed to this. However, the greed that was revealed in his dark eyes at this moment still revealed his desire for these spiritual sources. Suddenly, a voice that was filled with fury was transmitted over, causing the entire large hall to tremble slightly. "Flame demon! Don't you know that I am in seclusion? You actually dare to come and disturb me at this moment. Are you seeking death?" The old flame demon ghost immediately recovered after these words were uttered. His face revealed a terrified expression. He calmed himself down and hurriedly opened his mouth to speak. Reporting to Hall Chief, this subordinate does not dare to disturb your seclusion. However, the matter that this subordinate wishes to report this time around is an extremely important matter to us and cannot be delayed even a little. Therefore, this subordinate has boldly disturbed your seclusion. I hope that great Hall Chief will forgive me. The owner of the voice frowned tightly when he heard this. He took a deep breath. It was a long while later before he let out a cold snort and a dissatisfied roar was emitted. Speak. If it is not an important matter, this old man will destroy you. The old flame demon ghost instantly felt the surrounding temperature rapidly drop after these words were uttered, becoming incomparably cold. However, he was confident in his heart and was naturally not afraid. The old flame demon ghost's face was filled with confidence as he raised his head and looked to the front. He slowly said, Great Hall Chief Xiaoyan has arrived. Chapter 51. Please recommend me. Please recommend me. Bang. A wave of wild and violent Do Qi ripples surged over. The entire hall was instantly swept by a wave of powerful Do Qi storm. The fog scattered in all directions. Everything within the hall was completely revealed. In this manner, it caused the entire hall to appear incomparably empty. The expression of the old flame demon ghost suddenly changed the moment the storm swept over. His feet took a couple of steps back before he managed to dodge it. After the storm scattered, the old flame demon ghost bitterly turned his head around and looked at the interior of the hall. The old flame demon ghost focused his gaze and looked over. A human figure wrapped in a black robe was standing in the middle of the hall. 3 light clusters were suspended in the air, a couple of dozen feet above the head of the black-robed human figure. Only at this moment did the old flame demon ghost truly see the structure of the entire hall. The entire main hall was built with warm white jade. Even the utensils in the main hall were ordinary. The entire hall appeared to be white. However, at this moment, the entire hall was filled with white light. However, at this moment, the old flame demon ghost and the black-robed human figure in the hall appeared out of place in this bright and clean color. There was also the pitch-black chain that bound the 3 balls of light. The dark black chain was exactly the same as the chain in the hands of the few black-robed people from before. However, it appeared to be 1 size larger when compared to the latter in terms of size. The end of the chain reached the highest point of the hall. There was a white jade pillar that was shaped like an awl at that spot. The dark black chain was wrapped around it and locked into it. The symbols that were carved on the chain were emitting waves of light at this moment. At the same time that the light was flashing, a cream-white airflow slowly flashed over the chain and extended to the end of the chain. The eyes of the human figure under the black robe focused on the old flame demon ghost. His expression was ice-cold, causing the old flame demon ghost to instantly feel a chill all over his body. The old flame demon ghost hurriedly bowed to the black-robed human figure and spoke in a humble tone. This subordinate, the old flame demon, greets Hall Chief. The black-robed person emitted a cold snort when he heard this. He turned around and slowly walked toward the only chair in the hall. The Xiaoyan that you mentioned earlier, is he the Xiaoyan from the Do Qi continent? Those words were spoken very calmly. However, anyone could hear the excitement and agitation hidden within those words. It was as if they were good friends who had been separated from each other for many years and had finally found each other again. A glint flashed across the old flame demon ghost's eyes when he heard this. He nodded slightly and said to the black-robed man, replying to the hallmaster, according to the place where that person appeared and how he addressed himself, it should be correct. Before he finished speaking, he continued to speak. Moreover, this subordinate has also sensed an extremely wild and violent flame strength from his body. This also coincides with the attribute characteristic of Xiao Yan. Thus, this Xiao Yan should be the Xiao Yan we're looking for. When the old flame demon ghost spoke until this point, his eyes rotated slightly. He opened his mouth slightly, as though he wanted to say something. However, in the end, he did not say anything. That black-robed person was quiet for a moment when he heard this. He exhaled a deep breath of air and raised his head slightly. Suddenly, a light flashed. The black-robed person rose into the air and stood in midair. At the same time, a wild overbearing aura spread throughout the entire hall in an instant. A voice was also slowly emitted at this moment. Everyone, quickly gather in the main hall. This hall chief has an important announcement. When this voice was emitted, the spirits of everyone in the hall were instantly shaken. Even some of those who had been in a retreat for a long time were forcefully woken up at this moment. Their bodies moved and they stood up one after another. They flew in the direction of the main hall that was mentioned. At the same time, at another place, another person was also reporting the same thing to another person. A group of people stood within a luxurious hall. Their faces revealed curious expressions as they looked at a person in the hall. In the middle of the hall, a green-clothed old man with white hair at his temples was leisurely speaking to an old man in luxurious clothes seated on the main seat. Deacon Yun Mei, that Xiao Yan is indeed a rare genius. Although he is from a poor background, he was able to cultivate to such strength as an unaffiliated cultivator. He is truly extraordinary. Therefore, you believe that we should bring him under our Cloud Celestial sect and use him to strengthen our Cloud Celestial sect so that we can fight against the Ghost Temple sect together? Before Yuan Qing could finish speaking, the old man called Yun Mei, who was seated on the main seat, spoke to continue Yuan Qing's words. Yuan Qing hurriedly nodded his head in agreement when he heard this. Moreover, as if he wanted the old man to nod his head in agreement, Yuan Qing opened his mouth once again to speak. Moreover, I feel that this Xiao Yan may have some enmity with the Ghost Temple sect. This is because he dealt a heavy blow to the old flame demon ghost. Moreover, Yuan Qing paused when he spoke to this point. Only when Yun Mei could not help but open her mouth to speak did Yuan Qing raise his head slightly. He looked at Yun Mei and continued speaking. Moreover, I feel that the old flame demon ghost and the rest have come to the southwestern region for Xiao Yan. Once these words were spoken, everyone in the hall began to talk to each other. They had been guarding the borders of the continent for so many years because they did not know what the Ghost Temple sect was waiting for. Hence, they had always been held back. Yet, Yuan Qing had actually given such a huge answer. They had come to the borders of the continent just to wait for a single person. This answer was simply too weak and powerless. Yun Mei also frowned slightly. She looked at Yuan Qing with a meaningful expression, indicating for him to stop talking about this matter. Yuan Qing also understood when he saw this. His eyes turned slightly as he raised his head to look at Yun Mei. Originally, he seemed to want to say something. However, in the end, he did not say anything. A long while later, Yuan Qing finally forced a smile and said, "Hee. This is only my personal guess. There is no basis for it. Everyone, please do not take it to heart. Just treat it as a joke." Hearing this, everyone cast a glance at Yuan Qing and ignored him. Under Yun Mei's lead, everyone in the hall once again regained their calm. Yun Mei swept her gaze across the hall, which had calmed down. Her gaze paused on Yuan Qing for a moment before she opened her mouth to speak. "Yuan Qing, according to what you said earlier, this Xiao Yan is indeed not bad. It is not impossible for our Cloud Immortal sect to use him. However, I wonder if your intention this time is Xiao Yan's wish?" Apart from Yuan Qing, everyone else was confused by Yun Mei's words. Logically speaking, Yuan Qing should have said this because he had been entrusted by Xiao Yan. Why would she ask if it was Xiao Yan's wish? Indeed, this was somewhat incomprehensible. Chapter 52. Please recommend me. Please recommend me. Within the large hall, everyone looked at Yun Mei, who was seated in the main seat, with some doubt. They looked at each other and saw the same expression in the eyes of the others. Yuan Qing was also slightly taken aback by Yun Mei's words, but he quickly regained his senses. After thinking for a moment in his heart, Yuan Qing finally opened his mouth to speak the truth. Replying Deacon Yun Mei, "These words of mine are my own thoughts and not something that Xiao Yan asked me to do." Hua! Everyone present was in an uproar when Yuan Qing's words were uttered. All of this was actually Yuan Qing's own thoughts. Yuan Qing had actually spent so much effort to put in a good word for a person he had only met once and wanted to recruit him into the Cloud Celestial sect. This was really hard to understand. At this time, some people could not help but think, could it be that Xiao Yan had done something to Yuan Qing? Otherwise, given Yuan Qing's character, why would he be so considerate of others for no reason? Yun Mei nodded slightly when she heard this. After which, she quickly asked Yuan Qing, "Since this is the case, I think that there must be a reason behind it, right? Otherwise, why would a dignified elder of the Cloud Celestial sect in the Middle region put in so much effort just because of one person's talent?" Yuan Qing smiled awkwardly when he heard this. After which, he opened his mouth and said to Yun Mei, Deacon Yunmei is indeed impressive. Come to think of it, I only want to repay Xiao Yan for saving my life. I feel that if I recruit him into my Cloud Celestial sect, not only will I be able to repay the debt, but my Cloud Celestial sect will also have another genius. That is why I did this. Saving your life. Didn't he chase away the old flame demon ghost? Yunmei frowned slightly when she heard this and asked somewhat uncertainly. Yuan Qing nodded slightly and continued to speak to Yunmei. That's right. Although the old flame demon ghost was chased away by Xiao Yan, the final attack of the old flame demon ghost injured my physical body. Deacon Yunmei should also know that people like us, whose strength has yet to reach the Do D class, will definitely die if our physical bodies are damaged if we do not have a fresh physical body or some method to refine a physical body. Back then, there was only me, the old Balrog ghost, Xiao Yan and I at that location. Naturally, there would not be any other living human bodies. As soon as these words were spoken, there was no need for Yuan Qing to explain any further. Everyone was already well aware of the situation. Without a physical body, only some secret techniques that could refine a physical body could save him. Not just anyone could possess such a secret technique. Even in the Yunxian sect, only the upper echelons of the sect possessed such a secret technique. Everyone's eyes brightened when they thought of this. Even Yunmei, who was seated on the main seat, had a faint glow in her eyes. Xiao Yan had not only saved Yuan Qing, but also possessed a method to refine a physical body. This caused everyone's opinion of Xiao Yan to involuntarily change. Xiao Yan's talent had already caused everyone to exclaim in admiration. Adding the ability that he possessed, this Xiao Yan already possessed the conditions for them to take the initiative to rope him in. Just Xiao Yan's method to refine a physical body was sufficient to defeat most of the people in the hall. After all, even if Yunmei were to be included, not a single person present had reached the Do D class. In this way, Xiao Yan's secret technique was a great guarantee for the lives of everyone present. Yunmei frowned slightly as she looked at the chaotic crowd below. An impatient expression was revealed on her old face. She gently lifted her left hand and waved it in front of her. An invisible pressure spread out from Yunmei's body. The somewhat noisy and lively atmosphere in the hall instantly became quiet. Yunmei frowned and swept her gaze over everyone present. Finally, she let out a cold snort and looked at Yuan Qing. Yunmei looked at Yuan Qing and nodded. Her eyes revealed a look of admiration. She smiled slightly and opened her mouth to speak in a candid manner. It is very good that you are so grateful. My Cloud Celestial sect needs people like you. Only such an upright person can allow my Cloud Celestial sect to grow stronger. Ha 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 ha. Before anyone could react, Yunmei's expression turned serious. She quickly opened her mouth to ask Yuan Qing. However, since all of this is decided by you alone, I think that Xiao Yan may not agree to join my Cloud Celestial sect, right? Everyone's expression was slightly stunned when they heard this. Immediately, they looked at Yuan Qing with some worry in their hearts. Yuan Qing was also stunned by Yunmei's words. This was something that he had never expected. Indeed, this was only his own idea. He had thought this way because he wanted to rope in Xiao Yan. Moreover, it was not the kind of roping that everyone present had in mind. Through Xiao Yan's various actions and Xiao Yan's final confirmation, Yuan Qing had already decided. This Xiao Yan must be a disciple of a hidden great faction. Moreover, his identity was definitely not ordinary. This could be seen from how the old flame demon ghost had involuntarily cried out when he heard his name. The old flame demon ghost knew about Xiao Yan. It was very likely that his goal was to capture Xiao Yan and use him to threaten the faction behind him. Xiao Yan had asked Yuan Qing to reveal his identity as an independent cultivator. Yuan Qing had agreed to Xiao Yan's request without hesitation. In Yuan Qing's opinion, Xiao Yan's actions were entirely to prevent his identity from being exposed and bring disaster to himself. Therefore, Yuan Qing wanted to make use of this point to let Xiao Yan join the Yunxian sect. On one hand, he could conceal his identity. On the other hand, he could secretly pull in a powerful faction for the Yunxian sect. This would be a great contribution to the Yunxian sect. If he could recruit Xiao Yan into the Yunxian sect, as long as he could establish a good relationship with him, the overall strength of the Yunxian sect would be greatly improved in a short period of time. Unfortunately, if Yuan Qing knew about Xiao Yan's true background, he would not think this way. Yuan Qing frowned and thought for a long time. Finally, he took a deep breath. His eyes suddenly became determined as he said, "Deacon Yun Mei, I will definitely persuade Xiao Yan to join the Yunxian sect and help our sect recruit a genius." Yun Mei raised her eyebrows slightly when she heard this. She looked at Yuan Qing's determined expression and lowered her eyelids slightly. Her eyes moved, but she did not say anything. He then raised his head to look at Yuan Qing and nodded with a smile before saying, "It's fine. It's good that you have such intentions. Since it's for the sake of our Cloud Immortal sect, I wish you success in recruiting him to our Cloud Immortal sect." Before she finished speaking, Yun Mei's expression turned serious and she immediately opened her mouth to speak. "Remember, regardless of whether he agrees to join the Celestial Cloud sect or not, you must maintain a good relationship with him. Since he is a genius, do not provoke him easily. At the very least, you must maintain a good relationship with him. Do not make enemies for the Celestial Cloud sect. Otherwise, you will have to deal with him yourself." Yuan Qing hurriedly nodded in response. However, Yun Mei's eyes lit up as she looked at Yuan Qing. She smiled and said, "Don't worry. Haha, your luck is pretty good. It's a blessing in disguise. I see that the dou qi in your body has reached a bottleneck. I presume you're about to break through?" Without waiting for Yuan Qing to speak, Yun Mei continued. "In that case, I have a pill here. Take it." As soon as Yuan Qing finished speaking, Yun Mei waved her sleeve and a ray of light shot out and was caught by Yuan Qing. After Yuan Qing expressed his gratitude, he dismissed everyone in the hall. Yun Mei sat alone on the main seat. She raised her head to look at the sky outside the hall and muttered to herself, "Could it be as Yuan Qing said? That the person they are looking for this time is Xiao Yan? However, why is it so different from before? What on earth are these people who are neither human nor ghost doing?" Chapter 53. Humph! A bunch of stubborn, despicable old men. How dare they delay my return by a month? How infuriating! Humph! If I don't wait for a year or so before I return, I will write my name backwards. On the street, a sloppy old man in ordinary clothes was walking on his own. He did not care about the disgusted looks on the passers-by's faces. As he walked, he cursed under his breath, causing a few passers-by to feel annoyed. Even if he was not cursing the passers-by on the street, it would be easy to cause a misunderstanding. If it was not for the fact that someone saw the jade pendant hanging on his waist, it would have caused a commotion. There were a few people who didn't notice the jade token, but they noticed the jade token after being reminded by others. Immediately, their expressions changed drastically. After thanking the person who reminded them, they quickly left the place resentfully. This was because they saw the identity of the most powerful force in the area on the jade pendant. There was only one word on it: Xiao. The overlord of the area was the Xiao clan. In Xiao City, no one dared to offend the people from the Xiao clan. The old man seemed to have realized that something was wrong with him. He frowned slightly and lowered his sleeves to cover the jade pendant. Then, he lifted it up again. However, unlike before, the jade pendant that represented the entire Xiao clan had disappeared. On the other hand, the old man revealed a smile and left the city in a leisurely manner. Xiao City. Swoosh. Along with the sound of wind breaking, a man in white appeared on the peak of a mountain. The wind and waves attacked, causing Xiao Yan's robes to flutter and his hair to dance wildly. Xiao Yan took a deep breath of the cool air and felt the wind around him. His lips curled into a smile. With a move, he disappeared from the peak of the mountain with a gust of wind. In the next instant, a gust of wind swept across the forest in the distance. The trees within a radius of a few hundred feet swayed and rustled. Xiao Yan's figure appeared at the top of a tree. Hearing the rustling sound beside his ear, Xiao Yan swept his gaze over the leaves that filled the sky. His body once again flashed and disappeared. Xiao Yan's figure kept flashing and disappearing. In the clear and spacious area, the wind was howling. The sound of the wind was continuous and it swept across the area. Humph! Suddenly, Xiao Yan let out a roar. He stood in the air and opened his arms. A suction force appeared in his hands. A strong gust of wind blew between the heavens and the earth, sweeping away the clouds. Dark clouds surged, and the sky instantly turned dark. Xiao Yan moved his feet and took a mysterious step. The suction force in his hands increased. With a move, he disappeared from the spot with a gust of wind. The gust of wind seemed to have received an order, and it swept across the area. The wind stirred, and the sound of the wind and cranes shrieked between heaven and earth. It was like a mad dragon roaring, and its might shook the heavens. The invisible gust of wind swept up the leaves in the forest and formed a long green dragon that swam across the sky. The long dragon lingered in the sky. Its head was raised high. Although it was formed by wind and clouds, it still gave off a domineering feeling. However, a white-clothed figure suddenly appeared on the dragon's head when the long dragon lingered in the sky and raised its head. His hands were behind his back and there was a faint smile on his face. Xiao Yan waved his sleeves. The huge fellow under his feet, which was like a real dragon, suddenly turned into fallen leaves that filled the sky and drifted down with this wave. At this moment, an aged voice that was accompanied by a slight smile suddenly sounded out, and it said, "That's right. Haha, not bad. You actually borrowed the power of the wind and combined it with your footwork. You have successfully executed the wind step of the sky extinction steps on your first try. You can be considered to have practiced it quite well." Xiao Yan rejoiced and smiled upon hearing Gu Yu's words. He thanked Gu Yu. And said, "This is all thanks to old Gu's guidance. He allowed me to use the thunderbolt power of the 3000 lightning movement and the wind power of the sky extinction steps to cultivate the wind step of the sky extinction steps. That is why my cultivation speed is so fast." Gu Yu laughed when he heard this and continued, using the sky extinction steps to cultivate the sky extinction steps. Using the requirements of the second level, the Lingyun Great Realm, to cultivate the first level. Such a method is naturally incomparably fast. You think that you are cultivating the first level, but if I were to go into detail, you are actually cultivating the second level, the Lingyun Great Realm. Think about it. You have already cultivated the Lingyun Great Realm. In that case, wouldn't the wind extinction step be a piece of cake? Xiao Yan also nodded his head in admiration. He then opened his mouth and said, "If I persist in using this method to cultivate the sky extinction steps, I believe that I will be able to achieve initial success in the first step, the wind extinction step, in less than 2 months." After saying that, he stopped cultivating and casually found a place to rest. Gu Yu also smiled in admiration but did not say anything. The path of cultivation was about progressing step by step. Blindly cultivating would only cause one to be overly eager for quick success and ultimately fail on the verge of success. When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. This was the principle. Xiao Yan sat on the peak of a mountain. The flame art cultivation method in his body was slowly circulating as he absorbed the natural energy between heaven and earth. Suddenly, Xiao Yan seemed to have thought of something and withdrew from his cultivation state. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. At the same time, Xiao Yan shouted in his heart, "Old Gu, I have something to ask you. Elder Gu, I have something to ask of you. Please come out and meet me." His voice had just sounded when a beam of light shot out from the fire seal between Xiao Yan's eyebrows. It continuously transformed in front of Xiao Yan, and finally turned into the appearance of an old man. It was Gu Yu. Gu Yu raised his eyebrows when he saw Xiao Yan's anxious expression. He did not ask any further and sat down on the ground, waiting for Xiao Yan to speak. Xiao Yan saw Gu Yu sit on the ground and extended his hands. He placed a jade bottle in front of Gu Yu. Gu Yu frowned when he saw this. He glanced at Xiao Yan. When he saw Xiao Yan nod his head, Gu Yu frowned and received the jade bottle in his hand. Gu Yu looked at the jade bottle in his palm but did not see anything special about it. He did not think too much about it. Xiao Yan's objective should be in this jade bottle. Gu Yu slowly opened the jade bottle in front of Xiao Yan's somewhat surprised gaze. A thumb-sized milky white ball of light slowly floated out of the jade bottle. Gu Yu raised his eyebrows when he saw this. A surprised expression appeared on his face. Gu Yu extended his hand and light appeared in his hand, wrapping around the ball of light. After which, he looked at Xiao Yan and slowly opened his mouth. Who is this person? He is actually still alive. Chapter 54. At this moment, Gu Yu's face was filled with shock. His pupils shrunk, and his mouth was half open. He looked at the milky white light cluster floating above his palm and was unable to recover for a long time. Xiao Yan was also dumbfounded. Gu Yu was an elder. A senior was indeed a senior. Although this wisp of soul fragment was extremely weak, Gu Yu was still able to guess what was going on. Based on this alone, Xiao Yan believed that he might be able to find the method he had been searching for a long time from Gu Yu. A moment later, Gu Yu slowly withdrew the light cluster in his palm and placed it back into the jade bottle. Then, he handed it back to Xiao Yan. Guyu stood up and turned his body sideways. He frowned and sighed deeply. After which, he turned his head to look at Xiao Yan. Guyu slowly opened his mouth and looked at Xiao Yan. If I have not guessed wrongly, you want me to help you repair his soul, right? Xiao Yan was not surprised when he heard this. Since Guyu had already seen this wisp of remnant spirit, he should be able to guess what Xiao Yan's purpose was. Hence, Xiao Yan slowly nodded. His expression was a little surprised as he admitted to this point. Guyu nodded when he saw this. After which, he lifted his head to look at the sky. This caused Xiao Yan's heart to tighten slightly. He became a little worried. A long while later, Guyu finally opened his mouth and asked Xiao Yan, "What does this person have to do with you?" Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows when he heard this. He felt a little surprised in his heart. He pondered for a moment in his heart before he opened his mouth to speak. "He is my ancestor. In order to help me break through to the D state, he ignited his spiritual strength. In the end, he allowed me to raise my strength. Hence..." Before Xiao Yan could finish speaking, Guyu interrupted Xiao Yan. "Hence, you want to save him to repay him for his help. Am I right?" Xiao Yan lowered his eyelids and nodded when he heard this. He did not speak. Guyu frowned and didn't say anything for a long time. A long while later, he shook his head and rolled his eyes at Xiao Yan. His expression was somewhat reproachful as he slowly opened his mouth and said, "What a worrisome little fellow. Once you call this old man out, you ask such a difficult question. You really don't know how to respect your elders." Xiao Yan suddenly stood up. A joyous expression was revealed on his face. He did not refute Guyu's teasing. However, his eyes were red as he stared at Guyu. He was panting heavily as if he was an old bachelor who had suddenly seen a beautiful woman. Guyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It took a while before Xiao Yan slowly regained his composure. However, one could still see the excitement in his heart. Guyu watched as Xiao Yan slowly regained his composure and smiled helplessly. He stretched out his hand and gestured for Xiao Yan to calm down first. Then he sighed and slowly said, "That's right. This ancestor of yours does indeed still have a trace of life aura left in him." Guyu paused when he spoke. However, Xiao Yan's eyes brightened. This was something that he had not detected. Xiao Yan had never detected even the slightest trace of life aura before. Before Xiao Yan could speak, Guyu inhaled a deep breath and quickly said, "It's too early for you to celebrate. Don't be happy too early. It's still unknown whether or not your ancestor will be able to be resurrected. This is because his wisp of soul remnant is too weak. It is also because of this that there are no natural treasures that can nourish his soul. Therefore, you should not have too much hope. The only method that I can provide you is to use your own ability to protect him as much as possible." Xiao Yan's expression, which was originally filled with hope, appeared a little downcast at this moment. Xiao Xian was far too important to him and the entire Xiao clan. If it were not for Xiao Xian, Xiao Yan might not have been able to become an emperor. If it were not for Xiao Xian, the Xiao clan would have likely ceased to exist and would not have been able to prosper. Although Xiao Xian was a figure from 1,000 years ago, he had still fought for too much for the Xiao clan even after 1,000 years. However, Xiao Yan had bitterly searched for a revival method for 10 years. The hope in Xiao Yan's heart had been completely shattered by Guyu's words. Guyu frowned when he saw the downcast expression on Xiao Yan's face. He lowered his head and began to ponder. Time slowly flowed by in this silent atmosphere. Following the silence of the Xiao Yan duo, the area within 1,000 feet of Xiao Yan had become deathly silent. Everything appeared incomparably quiet. Even some magical beasts were quietly crawling on the ground. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. Their hearts were filled with fear. Finally, the sky gradually darkened. It was already evening. A day had quietly passed. Guyu, who had been quietly standing on the mountain peak, finally moved at this moment. His body trembled slightly. He slowly lifted his lowered head and looked at Xiao Yan, who still had a downcast expression. In the next moment, this silence, which had lasted for an entire day, was finally broken by Guyu. Guyu's eyes brightened. He looked at Xiao Yan's listless appearance and clapped his hands heavily. An expression of understanding appeared on his elderly face. This action of Guyu also woke up Xiao Yan, who had been in a downcast mood for the entire day. He looked at Gu Yu with a listless face. Only when Xiao Yan saw the expression on Gu Yu's face did his expression change. He was suddenly startled. Both of his eyes quickly reddened. His face was filled with wild joy and surprise. His seated body stood up from the ground. For some unknown reason, Xiao Yan's legs felt numb when he stood up, even though he had the physical body of a half-emperor. His body staggered for a moment before he managed to stabilize himself. Xiao Yan's body shook. The numbness in his legs disappeared. After which, his eyes were filled with anticipation as he looked at Gu Yu. It was a long while later before Xiao Yan swallowed a mouthful of saliva with great difficulty. This caused his dry throat to recover a little. His lips trembled as he asked Gu Yu, one word at a time. Old Gu, have you thought of my ancestors' resurrection method? Gu Yu gently nodded upon hearing this and acknowledged the request. Then, Gu Yu spoke again. This wisp of your ancestor's soul is simply too weak. The slightest carelessness could cause it to completely dissipate. I have thought of many methods in the past. I have considered hundreds of natural treasures that can help one's soul origin. Unfortunately, none of them are feasible. Although Gu Yu's methods had all failed, Xiao Yan calmed down. He was not anxious at all. Since Gu Yu had spoken, why would he lie to him? As expected, Gu Yu looked at Xiao Yan's calm expression and nodded. He continued to speak. He continued, until just now I thought of a method. Moreover, if this method doesn't work, there will be no hope of resurrecting your ancestor. This method is to use something as weak as your ancestor's soul fragment to nourish, merge, and recover. As for this sort of thing, it is the pure soul origin energy. Chapter 55. Soul Origin? Xiao Yan's face was uncertain as he looked at Gu Yu and asked in disbelief. That's right. It is soul origin. Moreover, it must be pure enough. Otherwise, if the soul origin is not pure enough and conflicts with your ancestor's remnant spirit when it merges, I believe you know what the final outcome will be. Xiao Yan frowned when he heard Gu Yu's words. The essence of one's soul was the foundation of a person. Extracting the essence of another person's soul was equivalent to Xiao Yan killing someone. However, such an action was not something that Xiao Yan could do. Although Xiao Yan did not dare to call himself a good person, he would not kill someone for no reason. This was not Xiao Yan's way of doing things. Even if all of this was to revive his ancestor, Xiao Yan would not do such a thing. However, if he did not do so, Xiao Yan would not be able to be revived. This made Xiao Yan hesitate. Moreover, there was another crucial point. Soul origin was a person's foundation. It was the foundation of life. How was it possible to completely purify it? Xiao Yan could not help but frown when he thought about these major problems. Gu Yu seemed to have seen through Xiao Yan's thoughts when he saw this. He laughed out loud and said, "You don't have to do such a thing. Why don't you just kill those who want to kill you? This way it will be in line with your heart and you will be able to get rid of your enemies. Isn't that great? As for what you are thinking about not being able to completely purify soul origin, ha 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 ha. That's just unnecessary worry. It's only been 10 years. Have you already forgotten your identity? Ha 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 ha. Flame Emperor. You are really a Flame Emperor. I can't believe you have forgotten your identity. A heavenly flame is a divine object that can incinerate all living things. What does that little bit of spiritual origin source count for? Moreover, you also possess the fallen heart flame, which has the greatest destructive power towards spiritual strength, and the purifying demonic lotus flame, which has the greatest purifying power. If you want to obtain a pure spiritual origin source, it is still a matter of your strength. Xiao Yan finally reacted after Gu Yu's words left his mouth. Who said that there was no spiritual essence? Xiao Yan's great enemy, the Han clan, had so many people. All of them with a spiritual essence that Xiao Yan was searching for. Xiao Yan smiled comfortably when he thought of this in his heart. After which, he calmed his heart. After exchanging a few words with Gu Yu, Zhou Yuan entered a state of cultivation. Seeing Xiao Yan enter a state of cultivation, Gu Yu stood to the side, stared at the jade bottle in Xiao Yan's arms, frowning, muttering to himself. Speaking of which, how did Xiao Yan's ancestor survive in the Genesis Qi? Moreover, he's using the Universe Genesis Qi to recover. Why is that? It was a long while later before Gu Yu seemed to have recalled something. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the jade bottle in Xiao Yan's arms. His mouth muttered to himself. He muttered to himself, Could it be that the cultivation method that Xiao Yan's ancestor practiced is that? That cultivation method has long disappeared from the continent. I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect it. Time flashed by. In the blink of an eye, it was already late at night. Xiao Yan, who was in the midst of training, suddenly opened his originally shut eyes. Xiao Yan waved his sleeve, and a stream of black light shot out. The black light began to transform a short distance in front of Xiao Yan. Finally, it transformed into a completely black human figure. If one were to carefully observe it, the seemingly black skin was actually an empty space. Ha 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 ha. Xiao Yan, the time has come. Isn't it time for you to fulfill your promise to me? Hearing this, Xiao Yan frowned slightly and opened his mouth to ask. Hey Yan, do you really want to become emperor that badly? Hey Yan let out a cold laugh when he heard this. Enough. It's not up to you to judge what I want. You just need to keep your promise. Xiao Yan also sighed when he heard this. He helplessly nodded his head and said faintly. He said indifferently, Since that's the case, are you ready? Humph. I've been waiting for this day for 1,000 years. I've long been ready. Why do I need to make unnecessary preparations? Xiao Yan nodded. Since that's the case, I'll help you. Before his voice faded, Xiao Yan's figure flashed and appeared high in the sky. Xiao Yan sat cross-legged in the air and shouted to He Yan below. Hey Yan, I see that your body is overflowing with battle qi. You only need to use Genesis qi to complete the last step of your breakthrough. I will do my best to absorb the energy between heaven and earth, while you only need to absorb Genesis qi. As long as there is enough Genesis qi, I believe that you will be able to break through to Emperor in less than 10 days. He Yan's eyes brightened slightly. Just as he was about to speak, another voice sounded. Xiao Yan, I suggest that you give him your jade bottle before you help him. If it's not bad, it should be of great use. Xiao Yan's eyebrows twitched when these words were uttered. Although he did not understand, he still gently nodded his head. He Yan's expression turned to one of shock. His entire body abruptly shook as he involuntarily took a few steps back. He looked to the side and saw an old man looking at him with a smile on his face. He Yan's expression changed. His figure moved and arrived in front of Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan smiled faintly. This is old Gu. You don't have to worry, he won't touch you. He Yan carefully looked at Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan extended his hand, and a jade bottle was placed in Xiao Yan's arms. At the same time he said, This is related to my ancestor. This is related to my ancestor. Be careful. Don't break it. Otherwise, you've also felt how terrifying Elder Gu is. Xiao Yan did not say anything else. His body straightened as he entered a state of crazy cultivation. He Yan once again glanced at Gu Yu below. He completely ignored Xiao Yan's earlier words. His eyes rotated rapidly, and he found a place with dense Genesis qi. After which, he threw himself into training. Gu Yu smiled faintly as he looked at the jade bottle in He Yan's arms. As soon as the two of them entered a state of cultivation, the sky suddenly became stormy and turbulent. Thunderclouds churned in the sky as lightning and thunder rumbled. The originally dusky world became as bright as day. At times it was night, but at other times it was day. The cycle of day and night continued for several hours, while He Yan's breakthrough was still in the process of slowly progressing. 10 days later, Xiao Yan beckoned with his hand, and a suction force was emitted from his hand. A jade bottle rose into the air and was kept in Xiao Yan's storage ring. At this moment, Gu Yu's eyes finally regained some clarity. In the sky. Roar! He Yan let out a furious roar. On the surface of his body, black flames rose up, and flames burst out from his eyes. The space around He Yan continuously shattered as he devoured the spatial power. The entire world was gradually absorbed into his body, becoming a part of him. Boom! A bolt of black lightning suddenly filled the sky and slammed into He Yan's body with a loud bang. After a loud boom, there was no one else apart from Xiao Yan and Gu Yu. Xiao Yan frowned slightly. Before he could do anything, another bolt of black lightning struck down from the sky. Boom! He Yan looked at the black lightning and let out a furious roar. His hand seals changed rapidly and numerous complicated seals were shot out one after another. Gu Yu's expression changed when he saw the seals, but he did not say anything in the end. Gu Yu's hand moved gently under his sleeve. An ray of light shot out. It flickered a short distance in front of Xiao Yan before disappearing. In Xiao Yan's eyes, everything in the sky was normal. He Yan would be able to make a breakthrough as long as he could endure a little longer. However, He Yan's aura was weak in Gu Yu's eyes, and the flames all over his body were dim. At this moment, a blue barrier appeared in the sky above the 9 heavens. The barrier continued to change. Finally, a huge palm was slowly formed. The huge palm slammed down on He Yan. He Yan would definitely die if he was hit. At this moment, a black light flashed, and everything in the sky returned to normal. It was as though nothing had happened. However, He Yan was nowhere to be found. At the same time, in a secret room thousands of miles away, the originally narrowed eyes of a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes were slowly opened at this moment. He looked in a certain direction. That direction was the direction where Xiao Yan was located. At the same time, in another place, a pair of eyes filled with blood was also looking over there. Although the two of them were not together at this moment, they spoke at the same time and doubtfully asked, "What's the matter? Who is it? Who dares to touch the sky boundary?" Chapter 56. Xiao Yan and Gu Yu stood quietly on a mountain peak. They looked up at the sky as if they were looking at something. Suddenly, Xiao Yan squinted his eyes and tilted his head to the right. At the same time, he spread his hands in front of his eyes. A few minutes later, Xiao Yan turned his head around. He opened his eyes and looked at the sky. However, he frowned and let out a soft sound of surprise. His eyes swept around, but in the end, he still couldn't find anything. Xiao Yan frowned even more. He then looked at Gu Yu beside him and asked, "Elder Gu, did you see anything?" "Elder Gu, when that white light flashed by earlier, did you see any traces of He Yan?" That's right, in Xiao Yan's sight, there was indeed a white light flashing past. It was this white light that had caused Xiao Yan to turn his head around. He did not see what had happened after that. At least, that was what Xiao Yan had seen. When Gu Yu heard this, he moved his finger under his sleeve. A light flashed across the sky and disappeared into the void. As it was daytime, even Xiao Yan did not notice it. Gu Yu's expression did not change. He looked at Xiao Yan and then at the horizon. He frowned slightly. After a while, he looked at Xiao Yan and shook his head helplessly. Xiao Yan's expression immediately became somewhat worried when he saw this. He muttered softly in his mouth. "How could this be? Even you, Elder Bone, did not notice it?" Gu Yu's expression changed slightly when he heard this. However, he still replied helplessly, "There is no way. There's nothing I can do about it. If my guess is correct, what He Yan encountered earlier should be a spatial storm. In addition to the void divine lightning, I was unable to discover it." "Void divine lightning? Are you talking about the black heavenly lightning?" Gu Yu nodded and continued, "The void divine lightning is in the void. It is equivalent to a sublimated version of the black demon lightning. Like the Dragon Clan, it is not bound by space and has the power to destroy the world. The void divine lightning, together with the shattered void where He Yan fought with it, and the spatial storm, could engulf He Yan without me noticing. However, don't worry. I believe that fellow will be fine. Perhaps he might even obtain some unexpected benefits because of this." Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows when he heard this. After hearing what Gu Yu said, Xiao Yan was no longer worried about He Yan's safety. However, Xiao Yan did not understand the benefits. When Gu Yu saw this, he smiled and left Xiao Yan with a mysterious question mark. In a flash, he entered Xiao Yan's body. "Hey, Elder Gu, don't sleep." Xiao Yan's expression became anxious when he saw this. He hurriedly opened his mouth and said, "What? What's wrong? You little brat. Do you have any other strange questions? Can't you finish your question in one go? I can't take so many strange questions." Xiao Yan smiled awkwardly when he heard this. He scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. "Elder Gu, I really don't have any questions this time. However, can you give me the remnant flame art in your hands?" "Why didn't you say so earlier? Otherwise, I would have given it to you." Xiao Yan felt helpless. This old man had clearly said that Xiao Yan was too weak and had not stabilized his body. Hence, he did not give it to him. However, now that he mentioned it, he was blaming Xiao Yan. Guyu casually said. Xiao Yan felt a buzzing sound in his head. His eyes became a little chaotic. Xiao Yan quickly bit the tip of his tongue. The pain instantly spread throughout his body. Xiao Yan quivered and woke up. Xiao Yan's mind shook. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and his eyes were filled with horror. The previous attack had truly frightened Xiao Yan. No wonder Guyu said that his foundation was not stable and that he should stabilize his body first. Based on the amount of information that Guyu had transmitted, if Xiao Yan's strength had not broken through to the peak of a 2-star half-martial emperor, it was likely that Guyu's attack earlier would have been enough to shatter his consciousness. At that time, before Xiao Yan could encounter any danger, he would have been killed by Guyu. Xiao Yan sat cross-legged on the ground. His soul power gathered above his head. At this moment, a scarlet fire lotus was in Xiao Yan's mind. It was emitting waves of blazing heat, roasting Xiao Yan's soul power. Xiao Yan's soul power had also surrounded the fire lotus, wrapping it in a soul barrier. He was doing his best to approach the fire lotus, trying to merge it with his body. A chi-chi sound was heard in Xiao Yan's mind. The soul power surrounding the fire lotus had also scattered a little. This caused Xiao Yan's face to turn red in the span of a couple of breaths. His expression was tense, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Waves of painful roars were emitted from his throat. Xiao Yan clenched his teeth tightly. His face was distorted, and his fists were tightly clenched. Beads of sweat the size of soybeans continued to drip from his forehead. His clothes were completely drenched in sweat. Ugh, I really don't know what to say about you. You ended up like this just to refine a broken chi technique. I am truly helpless against you. Mobilize the heavenly flame in your body. Use the heavenly flame to refine it. I believe that you will finish refining it soon. Hearing this, Xiao Yan did his best to suppress the fire lotus above his head. At the same time, he mobilized the heavenly flame in his body and gathered it above his head. The fire lotus above Xiao Yan's head seemed to have felt the arrival of danger. The scarlet fire lotus continued to spin. Waves of scorching heat waves spread out and collided with the soul barrier. Waves of chi-chi sounds were heard, causing Xiao Yan's entire body to tremble. Forcefully enduring the waves of intense pain that came from his soul, Xiao Yan mobilized all the heavenly flame in his body and gathered it above his head, wrapping the fire lotus within it. The fire lotus that was enveloped by the heavenly flame had clearly become a lot more well-behaved. However, it was still constantly resisting Xiao Yan's control. The peace of the fire lotus also gave Xiao Yan a chance to breathe. Taking a deep breath of the scorching hot air around him, Xiao Yan's mind moved, and the heavenly flame above his head also began to change. Under the control of Xiao Yan's mind, the gorgeous heavenly flame continued to change. It separated, then condensed again, condensed, and gradually faded away. The fire lotus also continued to struggle, wanting to escape from this cage. However, the obstruction and burning of the heavenly flame firmly trapped it within, unable to advance or retreat. The change in the situation also caused Xiao Yan to gradually calm down. He wholeheartedly controlled the heavenly flame and approached the trembling fire lotus. The heavenly flame gradually approached the fire lotus, but its temperature was also restrained until it completely enveloped the fire lotus within the heavenly flame. The fire lotus also gradually calmed down during this gentle process, enjoying the closeness of the heavenly flame. Chapter 57. The heavenly flame slowly approached and emitted a warm heat. After nearly 2 hours, the heavenly flame wrapped around the lotus. The fire lotus was finally completely wrapped by the heavenly flame. In fact, the heavenly flame had even merged with it, turning it into a colorful lotus. Under the observation of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, the fire lotus had become a part of his heavenly flame. The violent fire lotus from before had already disappeared. All that was left was a piece of art that was agglomerated from the heavenly flame, causing one to feel a sense of beauty. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth curled into a comfortable smile. With a thought, the fire lotus that had merged with the heavenly flame trembled slightly. With a bang, it exploded into countless tiny flaming light spots. The heavenly flame spread out and formed 3 large nets. These nets separated the light spots into 3 parts and refined them separately. Guyu did not say anything. He quietly observed Xiao Yan's every action. The seals in Xiao Yan's hands changed. One of the 3 nets turned into a raging flame. It carried the might of burning the sky and boiling the sea as it began to refine it. Although the fire lotus had been scattered, a portion of its original strength was still present. Hence, it continued to struggle within the heavenly flame. This caused the fire lotus fragments in the other 2 nets to begin to struggle. This caused Xiao Yan quite a bit of trouble. Xiao Yan frowned when he saw this. The seals in his hands changed again. The heavenly flame, which was already powerful, swelled once again and completely wrapped the fire lotus fragments within it. The other 2 parts also began to be refined. They did not even have the chance to struggle. Xiao Yan's spiritual strength poured into the nets and completely suppressed the fire lotus fragments within the 3 clusters of heavenly flame. Although there were still some vibrations, they could no longer cause any major commotion. Xiao Yan's refinement was still in progress. He was only waiting for the final refinement to be completed. At this moment, a group of uninvited guests had arrived in Jianghu City. At this moment, 8 figures were standing in the sky above Jianghu City in a black fog. The appearance of the 8 figures immediately alarmed everyone in the Jianghu City. The head of the Lu family, Lu Huabai, and the first elder Lu Xianxia, also walked out of the clan's great meeting hall. They raised their heads towards the sky and looked at the 8 figures in the distance. Lu Huabai frowned slightly. He was about to step forward when he was stopped by the first elder. Lu Xianxia lightly shook his head and whispered to Lu Huabai, "Patriarch, these people's identities are unknown. Just by looking at their attire, they are definitely not good people. It's better not to go." At this point, Lu Xianxia's tone paused slightly, then he lowered his voice and continued. "Moreover, these fellows might be here to look for Senior Xiao Yan. Therefore, it's better not to alarm them." Hearing that, Lu Huabai's pupils slightly shrank. He raised his head again and looked at the 8 figures in the sky. He nodded his head and retreated. Just as he was about to take a step back, his expression changed. He turned his head and was about to look behind him when he was stopped by a voice. "Don't move. Don't move at all. Otherwise, once those fellows make a move, it won't be a joke." After those words were spoken, Lu Huabai and Lu Xianxia both trembled. The expressions on their faces were immediately replaced by shock. Because, from the voice, they could tell that the owner of the voice was right behind them. Perhaps as long as they moved slightly, they would touch him. But they had never sensed him at such a close distance before. This made the 2 of them a bit nervous. That person seemed to have sensed this as well. He lightly snorted and said in a low voice, "You've been with me every day and you don't seem to be afraid of me. But now that I've appeared, you're scared to this extent. I really don't know how you live." Hearing that, the 2 of them frowned. Immediately after, they seemed to have thought of something. They looked at each other and Lu Huabai asked in a low voice, "Senior, do you know these people?" That person lightly sighed. He frowned as he looked at the 8 black figures in the sky and said in a low voice, "Right now I don't know them. However, if we talk about the future, I think I'll know them. These people are indeed very troublesome. He and I still don't completely understand the reason for this matter. So, for the time being we can only avoid them. However, it's only a matter of time before we meet them." Lu Huabai and Lu Xianxia nodded in confusion. They didn't continue to ask and continued to watch. In the sky, a figure shrouded in black fog was bowing and reporting something to the person at the front of the group. "Third Palace Master. There is indeed Xiao Yan's aura here. However, due to Xiao Yan intentionally erasing it, it's already very difficult to determine his exact location. I can only conclude that Xiao Yan has already left this Azure Sun City." Hearing that, the person who was called the Third Palace Master coldly snorted. His hoarse voice slowly spat out a sentence. Trash. Since there isn't any, you actually stayed here to investigate for so long. If you let that Xiao Yan escape, I will definitely kill you." The person who spoke just now was the old flame demon ghost. At this moment, the old flame demon ghost's face was filled with respect. He did not dare to relax in the slightest. However, from his respectful eyes, one could faintly see the deeply buried hatred. The Third Palace Master swept his gaze over the Azure Sun City below. He frowned slightly but still did not do anything. He glared at the old flame demon ghost who was standing at the side without moving. He coldly snorted and waved his sleeves. He turned around and flew out of the city. Before he left, He spat out another sentence from his mouth. What are you standing there for? Which direction did he go? Quickly lead the way for me. Otherwise, I will slap you to death right now. Hearing that, the old flame demon ghost was so angry that his face trembled. He glared at the third palace master who had turned around and left. He responded and quickly flew in front to lead the way. After the few people in the sky left, the people in the city finally caught their breaths. They guessed at each other's intentions. There were also some people who were afraid of attracting trouble and hurriedly left. Lu Mansion, Lu Huabai and Lu Xinqing turned around. What entered their eyes was a young man wearing snow-white clothes. He held a Buddhist jade fan in his hand. As he opened and closed it, waves of pill fragrance were emitted, refreshing one's mind. Seeing this, Lu Huabai and Lu Xinqing did not dare to slight him in the slightest. They hurriedly bowed and greeted. Greetings to Elder. The young man opened the jade fan in his hand and gently fanned it. He helped the two of them up. After which, he opened his mouth and said with a smile, Haha, no need to be so polite. I don't care about such etiquette. The two of you don't need to be so reserved. Feel free to do as you wish. Hearing this, the two of them hurriedly waved their hands and refused. However, under the other party's forceful request, they slowly relaxed. However, it was still possible to see that the two of them were not as relaxed as they appeared to be. May I know if Elder has any mission for me since you have appeared today? The atmosphere relaxed. Lu Huabai also gathered his courage and asked a question that he should not have taken the initiative to ask. Hearing this, the man smiled and shook his head. No. It's only because of those few people who are neither human nor ghost. If not, I would rather return to my original body. Without waiting for the two of them to react, the man immediately opened his mouth and said, Also, in the future, don't call me Elder. It sounds like I'm very old. I have a name. It's called Bai Hua. In the future, you can call me by my name. If you really can't, you can also call me Big Brother Bai. There's no need to call me Elder. Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other. Their faces were filled with helplessness. Immediately after, they looked at Bai Hua and nodded their heads. They did not say anything else. Chapter 58. Merge. The seals in Xiao Yan's hands changed as he cried out loudly in his heart. Immediately, the seals in his hands suddenly solidified and controlled the circulation of the heavenly flame in his body. The heavenly flame in his body followed some of the channels that it had never traveled before and finally returned to the route of the flame mantra chi method. After that, for some unknown reason, it once again deviated from the route of the flame mantra chi method. But even so, according to common sense, the discomfort in the body caused by the circulation of the chi method and the reversal of vital energy did not occur. It was indeed incomparably strange. Of course, this only applied to those who did not know. Xiao Yan would naturally not feel strange about this. The heavenly flame followed the new chi method route and slowly circulated, nourishing the channels. Xiao Yan also tried his best to familiarize himself with this chi method route that was a little longer than the original one. He slowly circulated the dou qi in his body and circulated it along this somewhat unfamiliar route. After a couple of hours of refining and merging, this portion of the flame mantra chi method had already been completely refined by Xiao Yan. Although it was still a little raw, it was more or less completely merged with the flame mantra that Xiao Yan practiced. So much so that when Xiao Yan circulated it, his heart felt even smoother and smoother. The circulation and condensation of his dou qi became even faster. This also caused Xiao Yan to feel quite happy in his heart. Qi methods were the foundation of cultivation. With a good qi method, one's cultivation would naturally be even faster. The rise of one's cultivation would naturally be even faster and more solid. In this way, one would naturally have more confidence when facing enemies in the future. Haha, not bad. To be able to completely merge and refine it in such a short period of time, it can be considered not bad. According to the current circulation speed and cultivation speed of the flame mantra, it has indeed reached the level of a human class chi method. But unfortunately, this chi method is not complete. Therefore, it looks like you still need some time to get used to it. Xiao Yan nodded and smiled but did not say anything. He would do whatever the Tu-Shi ancient emperor arranged. Although he, Xiao Yan, was not the kind of person who would be manipulated by others, the Tu-Shi ancient emperor would definitely not harm him. Moreover, he did indeed need strength now. With the Shi ancient emperor paving the road for him, it would indeed allow him to avoid many detours. The two of them chatted for a while before Xiao Yan entered his training mode and began to train. The next day on the top of the mountain, a ray of morning light shot from the horizon and shone on Xiao Yan's delicate and handsome face. Xiao Yan's closed eyes slowly opened and he exited his training mode. He narrowed his eyes and watched the dawn on the horizon. A few days later, 8 figures stood at the peak of the mountain. After probing for a while, one of them nodded and said respectfully to the person beside him, "That's right, Brother Li." Reporting to Third Hall Chief, this is the place where Xiao Yan had stayed. If I'm not wrong, he should have only left this place for a couple of days. With our speed, it is likely that we will catch up to him soon. The third palace master nodded when he heard this. He looked at the direction Xiao Yan left in and pondered for a while before opening his mouth. This direction is towards the savage ancient city. Xiao Yan is leaving the southern region. The third palace master paused for a while before letting out a cold laugh. You think you will be fine after leaving the southern region? Humph humph. The third palace master lifted his right hand gently before waving it down heavily. At the same time he shouted, "Let's go. We must catch up with Xiao Yan within 3 days and not let him leave the southern region." Everyone responded. After which, they flew in the direction that Xiao Yan had left in. 2 days later, in Desolation City, Xiao Yan sat at a table by the window on the second floor of a restaurant. He looked at the human flow below and took a sip of the tea in his hand. He smiled and got up to leave. Gu Yu's voice was suddenly heard, causing Xiao Yan to frown involuntarily. He sat down again. "Wait, I think there is no need for you to leave. There should be a good show to watch in a while." Xiao Yan frowned and asked Gu Yu in his heart, "Old Gu, what do you mean?" "Haha, I think the group you are waiting for has arrived. I can sense that there are 8 half-emperor level fellows heading over from the direction you came from. I think it won't be long before we reach this place." Xiao Yan frowned when he heard this. He lifted his eyes to look at the distant sky outside the window and asked faintly, "Old Gu, what are their strengths like?" "Haha, it looks like they are determined to take you down." The moment these words were uttered, Xiao Yan's expression immediately became solemn. However, he still continued to quietly listen. "Their overall strength is indeed quite a bit of pressure for you. The strongest among them is a 7-star half-emperor. Next are 2 4-star half-emperors and 5 1-star half-emperors." Xiao Yan did not say anything. He nodded silently to show that he understood. Then, his figure moved and disappeared from the restaurant. In the next moment, a white-clothed figure suddenly appeared in the sky. Everyone on the ground raised their heads to look at the sky with curiosity on their faces. Xiao Yan had his hands behind his back. His eyes were closed and his face was expressionless. He stood quietly in the sky, waiting for their arrival. After a while, a few faintly discernible black dots appeared in the distant sky before everyone's eyes. In a short moment, they arrived within 100 feet of Xiao Yan. "TSK TSK TSK TSK. Xiao Yan, I've heard of your name like thunder. Do you know how many people we've sent out to wait for you? We've waited bitterly for 10 years. Now, you've finally appeared." Xiao Yan frowned and slowly opened his eyes. His eyes narrowed into black lines as he looked at the person who spoke. However, he still smiled and asked, "Waiting for me? Haha, I've never met any of you before. Why would you wait for me to say such a thing?" "Tisk TSK TSK TSK. It looks like Sir Xiao Yan still doesn't understand many things. In that case, Sir Xiao Yan, please return with us. My master will personally explain it to you. I'm sure Sir Xiao Yan will understand the reason behind this." Xiao Yan's lips curled upwards when he heard that. He let out a mocking laugh and said with a mocking expression in his eyes, "Haha, haha. I'm sorry. I like to be with people. I really can't get along with people like you who are neither human nor ghost." The eyes of the third hall chief suddenly became sharp when he heard this. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Xiao Yan. It was a long while later before he slowly opened his mouth and said, after a while, he slowly said, "It looks like you don't want to come with us. In that case, don't blame me for being rude. All of you attack. As long as you don't let him die, nothing else matters." Before the third hall master finished speaking, the 7 people behind him moved and charged toward Xiao Yan. A great battle was about to break out. Chapter 59. Xiaoyan looked at the 7 clusters of black fog surrounding him and frowned. A grave expression flashed across his face. Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes. He looked at the 3rd Hallmaster again and said, "There doesn't seem to be any enmity between us. Moreover, this is also my first time here. Although I injured the old flame demon ghost that day, I didn't do anything to him." Hearing this, the old flame demon ghost's expression instantly became ferocious. His eyes looked at Xiaoyan as if they were about to spit fire. "Humph! Xiaoyan, if you didn't sneak attack me, how could I have been injured by you? Xiaoyan, take a palm from me." Before his voice sounded, the old flame demon ghost was already anxious. Without waiting for the 3rd Hallmaster's order, he let out an explosive cry. His body moved and he threw a palm at Xiaoyan. Seeing this, Xiaoyan's face revealed a cold smile. His right arm was waved in front of him, following which, his hand suddenly clenched into a fist. At the same time, the heavenly flame in his body surged out from the surface of his body and covered his entire body. At this moment, Xiaoyan appeared to have completely turned into a colorful and gorgeous fire person. Being enveloped by the heavenly flame, Xiaoyan slowly raised his head. A pair of bright eyes slightly brightened and a bright light flashed through them. Xiaoyan suddenly waved his right arm. His body shook and he charged toward the old flame demon ghost. Boom! An enormous wave of fire swept across the sky and blocked everyone's line of sight. The 3rd Hallmaster's expression also changed slightly. Under the black fog, a pair of sinister eyes emitted bits of pitch-black light. This Xiaoyan actually managed to raise his strength to the peak of a 2-star half-martial emperor in a short 2 months. This is truly astonishing. If it is only because of his bloodline awakening, then this Xiaoyan is truly extraordinary. From the looks of it, this Xiaoyan cannot be left alive. This time around, I must take him down. A bloodthirsty glint flashed across the 3rd Hallmaster's eyes as this thought flashed across his mind. Just as the 3rd Hallmaster was about to make a move, his expression changed again. With a wave of his sleeve, a black energy shot out. Then, another explosion was heard. The sound was accompanied by a miserable cry. The old flame demon ghost's figure appeared below the fire wave. Humph! Trash! The 3rd Hallmaster snorted coldly without turning his head. Immediately, his eyes became stern and the fire wave in front of the 3rd Hallmaster was directly separated. The wave of fire broke apart, revealing Xiaoyan's figure. Xiaoyan turned around and met the 3rd Palace Master's gaze. At the point where their eyes met, a burst of fiery light flashed. Then, Xiaoyan's body suddenly trembled, and he took 3 steps back. The 3rd Hall Chief coldly laughed. His body moved and a fist smashed toward Xiaoyan. Wherever the punch passed, the wind from the punch whistled. The space around the 3rd Hallmaster shattered with a loud bang, revealing a large patch of pitch-black void space. Wherever the 3rd Hallmaster passed, the space turned into a vacuum. It took a while before it slowly recovered. All of this seemed to take a long time to describe, but in reality, it only took an instant. An instant was enough for Xiaoyan to do a lot of things. However, at this moment, Xiaoyan felt powerless. Xiaoyan's face was grave. A 7-star half-martial emperor was indeed not someone he could easily defeat. The gap between the two of them was still too big. The space around him had already been locked down. It was impossible for him to dodge. Xiaoyan looked at the punch that was getting closer and closer. His expression became firm. With a thought, the dragon phoenix bloodline in his body was stimulated. Golden dragon scales instantly covered his entire body. His body trembled. He stepped on the void and instantly charged toward the 3rd Hallmaster. Yellow spring palm. Xiaoyan let out an explosive shout. Qi rapidly condensed in his heart and met the 3rd Hallmaster's fierce punch head-on. Boom! A loud sound was emitted. A wave of wild and violent energy swept through the world, completely destroying the wave of fire that had yet to disperse. In the sky, the 3rd Hallmaster's figure was like a crane standing in the sky. As for Xiaoyan, he was blasted several hundred feet away by the explosion. In the end, with an explosive sound, he was forcibly embedded into a huge mountain. Even so, the 3rd Hallmaster, who was standing upright in the air, still frowned slightly. A look of astonishment flashed across his eyes, and he could not help but mutter in a low voice, "That's right." He couldn't help but mutter, I never imagined that Xiao Yan's physical body would be this frightening. Even with 30% of my strength as a 7-star half-martial emperor, I was still unable to cripple his arm. This is truly chilling. However, immediately after, the third hallmaster's eyes once again turned ice-cold. He looked at the huge mountain that Xiao Yan had crashed into. The third hallmaster's hands once again clenched into fists. Creaking sounds were emitted. The old and dark yellow skin on his knuckles was also suffused with bits of white. Immediately after, the third hallmaster's figure flashed. He disappeared along with the black fog that lingered around his body. At the same time, a gust of cold wind blew in the sky for no reason. The cold wind blew and formed several whirlwinds. They brought about whistling wind howls as they spiraled around the crowd. It was quite strange. In the next instant, the third hallmaster, who was originally rushing toward Xiao Yan, suddenly let out a furious roar. Roar! Xiao Yan! You actually dared to toy with me. You are simply courting death. Today, I will definitely skin you alive and pull out your tendons. The third hallmaster's eyes were scarlet red as he turned around. He was so angry that his face twitched incessantly. The aura from his body suddenly soared, causing the black fog around him to ripple like waves of water. What he did not expect was that Xiao Yan was actually able to silently disappear before his eyes under the cover of his 7-star half-martial emperor's strength. This caused him, a 7-star half-martial emperor who had been in a high position for a long time, to inevitably feel humiliated in his heart. A cold wind blew past. Immediately after, a white-clothed figure appeared in the sky. He looked at the third hallmaster with a sneer on his face. The third hallmaster's face twitched. He completely mobilized the dou qi within his body. His figure flashed and appeared before Xiao Yan. He threw a punch toward Xiao Yan. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's face was filled with shock. He leaned back slightly and spread his arms. With the sound of wind blowing under his feet, his figure flashed and disappeared from where he stood. Unfortunately, even though Xiao Yan's reaction was already very fast, the third hallmaster's punch still left a shallow imprint on Xiao Yan's chest. Xiao Yan's figure flashed and appeared 100 feet away. PFFF. Xiao Yan opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood with a flushed face. Immediately after, he looked at his chest. There was a palm-sized bloody imprint there. Xiao Yan's face twitched slightly. He thought in a somewhat serious manner. The strength of a 7-star half-martial emperor is indeed not to be underestimated. If it wasn't for my quick reaction, I'm afraid that the punch just now would have been enough to seriously injure me and make me lose the ability to fight. As Xiao Yan thought in his heart, he felt a chill run down his back. A 7-star half-martial emperor was indeed not someone he could contend against. He could not even receive a single punch from him. What could he use to fight to the death with him? Haha, what's wrong? You're not confident anymore? Don't you still have a human rank dou skill? Are you still afraid of him? Chapter 60. Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows when he heard this. He frowned a little in surprise. He glanced at the third hallmaster in the distance and asked Guyu in his heart, Old Gu, I can understand why you say that I have a man-class dou technique. You have said in the Serene Bone Palace that the strength of the Angry Buddha reincarnation has already reached the level of a man-class dou technique. However, does this have anything to do with you being afraid of the third hallmaster? Or do you want me to rely on a man-class dou technique to fight with a 7-star ban emperor? Guyu choked when this question appeared in Xiao Yan's heart. He coughed a couple of times before slowly coming to a stop. Xiao Yan seemed to have realized that he had misunderstood, but he did not continue to ask. This was because he knew that Guyu would tell him the answer. As expected, Guyu finally opened his mouth a moment later. If it weren't for the fact that this old man is here to hear you say these words, I'm afraid that even a random person would be angered to the point of smoke coming out of their 7 orifices after hearing you say such unbearable words. Xiao Yan blinked his eyes. It seemed that he had sensed that this man-class dou technique was not ordinary. However, he continued to look at the third hallmaster with a calm expression. Xiao Yan relaxed when he saw that the third hallmaster was looking at him with a doubtful expression. Although a man-class dou technique is the lowest class among the Tian-class dou techniques, the development of a man-class dou technique is the most immeasurable among the Tian-class dou techniques. As for the Tian-class dou techniques, this was only a general term. A man-class 4 spirit saint was called a Tian-class dou technique. The Tian-class 4 spirit saint was called a Tian-class dou technique. The Tian Class 4 Spirit Saint was called a D-Class Do technique. This was also a classification of the Do techniques mastered by each individual. It was very ordinary. As for the development of a Man-Class Do technique, it was because a Man-Class Do technique was the easiest to practice and also the easiest to comprehend among the Tian-Class Do techniques. When a Man-Class Do technique was practiced to a high level, there would be an illusionary image of the person who created it. This would allow the practitioner to control it more easily. It was also because of this illusory figure that a practitioner was able to have the opportunity to comprehend the profoundness within it and raise the foundation of the Do technique. There was even the opportunity to create a Ling-Class Do technique. The strength of a Man-Class Do technique is naturally incomparably powerful. Let's use you as an example. If you were to use a Man-Class Do technique to deal with this third hall master, you would be able to seriously injure him in one move. You should also understand that the Man-Class Do technique is not so simple. Moreover, that Man-Class Do technique of yours is something that you created yourself. From this point of view, its strength should be a little stronger. So, you can be at ease and go. The words were extremely long. However, from the point of view of Xiao Yan and the third hall chief, only a couple of breaths had passed. When Xiao Yan heard this, his heart was greatly stirred. He took a deep breath and was about to step forward and fight a few more rounds with the third hall master. However, his expression changed in the next instant. He held his chest with his hand and violently coughed a couple of times. Xiao Yan spat out a mouthful of blood that remained in his mouth. He sensed the faint scent of blood that was transmitted from his nose. His heart involuntarily felt somewhat bitter. The speed of this third hall master was clearly above his. The first condition for Xiao Yan to use the Angry Buddha reincarnation was that he needed sufficient time. However, in the current situation, it could be said that Xiao Yan did not have sufficient time to use the Angry Buddha reincarnation. Although Xiao Yan had the help of the Sky Extinction Step, he had yet to master the Sky Extinction Step. Even if he used all his strength, his speed would at the very most be on par with the third hall master. In this way, in addition to the old flame demon ghost and the others watching from the side, it was likely that he would not have the opportunity to use the Angry Buddha reincarnation. When Xiao Yan thought of this in his heart, his brows were tightly knit together. Both of his eyes swept all around him, searching for a way to escape. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Yan made up his mind. Since there was no other way to survive, he could only force his way out. Xiao Yan's eyes suddenly turned cold. The third hall master raised his brows slightly and let out a cold laugh. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Xiao Yan with eyes filled with disdain. Xiao Yan's body moved. A whirlwind was formed under his feet as he silently disappeared into the void. The third hall master let out a cold laugh. Both of his fists were tightly clenched. His body moved and appeared at a certain spot in the void. He waved his huge fist, which carried the power of a burning wind, and violently struck the space in front of him. Bang! A muffled sound was emitted. The third hall master frowned slightly under his mask. Immediately, it turned into a cold snort. His body moved and once again rushed out in a flash. At this moment, Xiao Yan's expression was incomparably solemn. He was fully focused on using the Sky Extinction Step to dodge in all directions. He did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. Every time the third hall master flashed, a muffled sound would be emitted in the air. Sometimes, it would also be accompanied by a muffled snort. However, there was no trace of that person. This also caused the people in the city below to click their tongues in amazement. A moment later in the sky, a tattered figure with blood at the corner of his mouth and bruises on his body finally came to a stop. Xiao Yan's mouth was panting heavily. The skin at the corner of his eyes was trembling. Xiao Yan glanced at his tattered clothes before parting his mouth to look at the third hall chief. A cold laugh was emitted from his mouth. In the short exchange just now, the third hall master had thrown out a total of nearly 100 punches. However, there were only a dozen bruises on Xiao Yan's body. Although his clothes were a little tattered, the injuries on Xiao Yan's body were much fewer. On the other hand, Xiao Yan also realized that under such a close pursuit, his control of the Sky Extinction Step was getting better and better. This was indeed good news for Xiao Yan. When the third hall master saw Xiao Yan's mocking smile just now, the anger in his heart soared. His fists were once again tightly clenched as his mouth let out an explosive roar. Roar! The few of you attacked together. Today, I will definitely cripple you. When the 7 people heard this, with the flame demon old ghost in the lead, their bodies moved. As the seals in their hands changed, a loud explosive roar was emitted from their mouths as they violently attacked Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan frowned. However, he did not panic. His footwork changed as he twisted at a strange angle. His body suddenly moved and once again disappeared in the sky. At this moment, the attacks of the 7 people had already arrived in front of him. Unfortunately, Xiaoyan's body had already disappeared without a trace. Boom! After throwing out a punch, the 3rd Hallmaster's body appeared 1,000 feet away from the 7 people. However, what welcomed him was a thick and heavy black ruler. At this moment, this huge ruler had already been forcefully blasted into a 3-inch deep groove by the 3rd Hallmaster's wild and violent punch. Around the groove, there were also some densely packed cracks. Chapter 61. Seeing this, the 3rd Palace Master's expression suddenly changed. Only then did he realize that Xiaoyan was playing with him again. Anger rose in his heart. He struck out with his palm and sent the huge black ruler flying. Immediately after, he turned his head to look behind him. Without any hesitation, his body shook violently as he flew backward. Boom! The huge black ruler was sent flying tens of thousands of feet away by the 3rd Palace Master's palm. In the end, it violently smashed into the ground. The force that it carried also created a pit that was thousands of feet wide on the ground. A gray fog rose and covered everything. At the bottom of the pit, beside the black ruler, the space wiggled and a white-clothed man's figure appeared. It was Xiaoyan, whom the 3rd Palace Master had turned around to chase after. Xiaoyan extended his hand and pulled out the heavy Xian ruler from the ground. Seeing the 3-inch deep fist print on the ruler's body, Xiaoyan could not help but frown tightly. Some anger rose in his heart. This heavy Xian ruler was given to him by Yao Lao. It contained many of the feelings that Xiaoyan had for Yao Lao. Now that he saw the heavy Xian ruler in this state, Xiaoyan could not suppress the anger in his heart. Fortunately, Xiaoyan did not let this anger get to his head. Now, the heavy Xian ruler was almost scrapped. Although there was anger in his heart, the most important thing was that in the face of a great disaster, how to solve the current problem was what Xiaoyan should be most concerned about. The matter of the heavy Xian ruler could be solved sooner or later. However, if he did not leave now, there would be no more chance. When Xiaoyan thought of this in his heart, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Immediately, he kept the heavy Xian ruler into his storage ring. His body flashed and disappeared once again. After a few breaths, a sharp sound of rushing wind sounded. Immediately, the 3rd Palace Master's figure appeared at the bottom of the pit. Looking at the mark left behind by the huge ruler after it was pulled out, the 3rd Palace Master's face under the mask trembled in anger. He let out an explosive roar and surrounded Xiaoyan again. Behind him, the 7 figures also helplessly chased after him. Everyone in the city was shocked when they saw the 9 figures that disappeared and reappeared in an instant. Usually, they wouldn't even dare to think about such peerless experts. But today, 9 of them had appeared in front of them. How could they not be shocked? After the 9 people completely disappeared from the sight of the people in the city, everyone began to discuss. The city that was incomparably quiet a moment ago became noisy once again. Roar! Xiaoyan! You actually dared to play tricks on this Hall Master time and time again. This Hall Master will definitely take you down today, and then let you have a taste of a fate worse than death. At this moment, Xiaoyan was using the sky extinction steps with all his might to fly in the direction of the ancient savage city. 10,000 feet behind Xiaoyan, there was a cluster of black fog in a human shape that was giving close chase. Behind it, 7 figures with the same color were also chasing after them at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, the distance between the 2 of them was also shrinking at an extremely fast speed. It wouldn't be long before Xiaoyan was intercepted by the 3rd Palace Master. Seeing this, Xiaoyan couldn't help but feel anxious. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only try his best to fly forward. Seeing Xiaoyan increase his speed again, the 3rd Palace Master let out a cold snort. However, he immediately let out another explosive roar. His body shook and his speed suddenly increased to another level. He shook off the 7 people chasing behind him and intercepted Xiaoyan in front of him. Xiaoyan also frowned tightly at this moment. He felt anxious in his heart. If this continued, he was afraid that he would really be in trouble today. Just as he was thinking in his heart, a black figure suddenly appeared 1,000 feet in front of Xiaoyan. This person was the 3rd Palace Master. The 3rd Palace Master paused. His eyes were filled with an endless murderous intent as he looked at Xianxia. He let out an explosive roar from his mouth. Xianxia, where do you think you are running to? Today, you have toyed with me time and time again. Today, you must return with me. Once your matter is settled, I will definitely torture you to death. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's charging figure slowly stopped in the air. His eyes were extremely solemn as he looked at the third palace master. After a few breaths, the other 7 people also caught up. They surrounded Xiaoyan one after another, leaving Xiaoyan with no way to escape. Humph! The 7 of you, give it to me. Use your most vicious Do skills to viciously beat Xiaoyan. I want to exhaust his Do Qi and take good care of him. The third palace master looked at Xiaoyan as he repeatedly gave orders from his mouth. When he said the word, take good care, his tone was especially heavy. From this, one could tell just how great of a humiliation Xiaoyan's actions today were to him. Although each of the 7 people had different thoughts in their hearts when they heard this, they still raised their hands. Numerous complicated seals were formed by the few of them. Among them, the seals in the hands of the old flame demon ghost were especially different. Once the seals were formed in the hands of the old flame demon ghost, the space around him began to fluctuate. Waves of water-like ripples spread out, appearing incomparably powerful. Xiaoyan's heart was also incomparably solemn when he saw this. The eyes of the third palace master hardened when he saw this. He looked at the old flame demon ghost with some surprise, but he did not say anything. At this moment, the old flame demon ghost had suddenly become the focus of everyone's attention. The Do skill that his hands were forming was the man-class Do skill that he had used back then, the mysterious underworld soul-devouring palm. Although Xiaoyan was unable to see the expression of the old flame demon ghost due to the cover of the mask when this skill was used, there was no need to think too much. Xiaoyan was incomparably clear in his heart. Given the strength of the old flame demon ghost, it would definitely be extremely difficult for him to use this man-class Do skill. If someone were to disturb him, it was likely that he would be seriously injured at the very least. Xiaoyan acted as soon as he thought of this. His body moved and rushed toward the old flame demon ghost. The third palace master emitted a cold snort when he saw this. He flew forward and blocked Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan panicked in his heart. He spread his right hand and threw a palm toward the third palace master. At the same time, he cried out explosively from his mouth. Yellow spring palm. At the same time, the seals in Xiaoyan's left hand changed. Before his palm collided with the third palace master, Xiaoyan once again opened his mouth. Yellow spring divine anger. Ma, ma, ma. Bang. The third palace master's spirit shook when the yellow spring divine anger was used. Immediately, he became absent-minded for a moment. Although it was only for an instant, it was already sufficient for Xiaoyan. After sending the third palace master flying with a palm, Xiaoyan once again threw a palm at the old flame demon ghost. Yellow spring divine anger. Yellow spring palm. Yellow spring finger. After a set of Do skills, Xiaoyan finally appeared in front of the old flame demon ghost. At this moment, the Do skills in the hands of the old flame demon ghost had finally reached the end. Xiaoyan threw a palm forward. Just as the old flame demon ghost's scarlet eyes were about to attack Xiaoyan, a palm struck the old flame demon ghost's palm. Bang! A black-colored energy storm swept apart. The third palace master and the others were sent flying tens of thousands of feet by this energy storm. Finally, they violently smashed into the ground, forming a deep pit that was 1,000 feet wide. Even the old flame demon ghost himself was unable to escape. However, the strange thing was that Xiaoyan's figure was not among the people who were sent flying by the storm. Chapter 62. The black energy storm swept across the land and covered half of the sky, causing the entire sky to suddenly darken. 8 black human figures were blown away by this energy storm. All of them were seriously injured. The third hall master climbed up from the ruins. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His face twitched under the mask. He took a deep breath of the air that was filled with the smell of blood. His body moved again and he appeared in the sky. The third hall master scanned his surroundings. All he could see was a cloud of dust. The third hall master forcefully endured the waves of pain that were emitted from his chest. He waved his tattered sleeves violently and the cloud of dust was blown away. When the cloud of dust dispersed, 8 huge pits were revealed. A black human figure could be vaguely seen in 7 of the huge pits. The third Hall Master ignored it. Instead, he scanned his surroundings again. His eyebrows under the mask were tightly knitted together. How can this be? Where is Xiaoyan? He was the closest to the flame demon back then. Even the flame demon was seriously injured. How can he be fine? Don't tell me that Xiaoyan was directly killed by that attack? Doubt suddenly appeared in the third Hall Master's heart. However, he was also somewhat helpless. He could not find Xiaoyan's body, nor could he detect Xiaoyan's aura. As such, the third Hall Master did not know whether Xiaoyan was dead or alive. Moreover, he actually began to worry in his heart. Xiaoyan was dead, but his body was nowhere to be found. This made it difficult for the third Hall Master to report to the third Hall Master. It was likely that he would suffer when he returned. Xiaoyan was not dead. However, the third Hall Master was unable to sense even the slightest aura of Xiaoyan. As such, Xiaoyan was nowhere to be found, and his corpse was nowhere to be found. This caused the third Hall Master's heart to become even more worried. Humph! It's all the flame demon's fault. If I can't find Xiaoyan, I will definitely kill you. The third Hall Master was furious and began to blame the flame demon old ghost. However, just as his voice sounded, the expression under the mask suddenly changed. He turned around and looked behind him. At this moment, a white-clothed human figure slowly appeared 10,000 feet behind the third Hall Master. It was Xiaoyan. At this moment, Xiaoyan's clothes were a little tattered. His face was a little pale and there were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. However, if one were to look at it from an overall perspective, Xiaoyan's condition was much better when compared to the third Hall Chief and the others. The third Hall Chief's expression once again changed when he saw that Xiaoyan was fine. He frowned in a somewhat grave manner. Xiaoyan parted his mouth and smiled when he saw the miserable manner of the third Hall Chief. However, he did not show the slightest worry. He just stood in the air with the corners of his mouth curled up. The anger in the third Hall Master's heart continued to burn. The third Hall Master's face twitched violently under the mask. If not for the mask covering his face, it was likely that anyone who saw him would think that he was sick. Under Xiaoyan's teasing, the third Hall Master was really angry. His body moved and a fist smashed toward Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan did not move at all when he saw this. This caused the anger in the third Hall Master's heart to burn even more. The strength of his fist also became even more ruthless. Boom! The huge fist carried a strong wind that tore through the air as it violently landed on Xiaoyan's body. However, before the third Hall Master could rejoice, the expression on his face became interesting again in the next moment. Through the mask, one could see that the third Hall Master's eyes were filled with disbelief. The expression on his face under the mask was also replaced by astonishment. The third Hall Master was stunned for a moment in the air. Only then did he react. His voice was solemn as he said, "An afterimage. How is this possible? With Xiaoyan's strength, how can he be faster than me?" In the next instant, the third Hall Master's gaze turned to another direction. There, accompanied by the whistling of a wind, Xiaoyan's figure appeared once again. When Xiaoyan's figure appeared, the third Hall Master finally reacted. He involuntarily said, No wonder you were able to dodge my attack so easily. So that's how it is. You have obtained the Sky Extinction Step. No wonder you can easily surpass me in terms of speed with such strength." When Xiaoyan heard this, the smile that was supposed to appear on his face did not appear. Instead he frowned. The gaze that he used to look at the third Hall Master was replaced by a murderous intent. Xiaoyan was already very clear about the matter of the Sky Extinction Step. The Lu clan had also repeatedly warned Xiaoyan not to let others know about the Sky Extinction Step. However, he had just successfully mastered the first major stage of the Sky Extinction Step, the initial stage of the Wind-Shaking Realm. He did not expect that the third Hall Master would recognize him in such a manner. Just based on this point alone, Xiaoyan could not allow the third Hall Master to live. That's right. Xiaoyan's wind-shaking realm of the Sky Extinction Step had stepped into the initial stage when the wild and violent storm swept over. Although the mysterious underworld soul-devouring palm of the old flame demon ghost was once again blocked by Xiaoyan, the energy that erupted from it was enough to seriously injure Xiaoyan and cause him to be on the brink of death. However, this opportunity came at such a coincidental time. Just a moment ago, Xiaoyan had actually broken through the wind-shaking realm of the sky extinction step under such a dangerous situation and reached the initial stage. Xiaoyan had also used this great opportunity to dodge this fatal blow. Although he did not manage to completely dodge due to the sudden breakthrough, Xiaoyan was much better off compared to the serious injuries of the old flame demon ghost and the others. Xiaoyan looked at the third hall master as a murderous intent rose in his heart. The third hall master also seemed to have sensed the impending danger. The originally grave expression on his face under the mask became even deeper. The dou qi in his body circulated to every part of his body, preparing to face Xiaoyan's attack at any moment. Xiaoyan ignored the third hall master's actions. Instead, he calmed his heart and deeply inhaled a breath of cool air. The air carried a trace of bloody taste in his mouth as it passed through his throat, leaving behind bits and pieces of bloody sweetness. The dou qi in his body slowly circulated. Waves of energy gathered around Xiaoyan and formed a huge energy whirlpool around him. The third hall master frowned. What was this fellow planning to do? He actually dared to train at such a time. Was he not afraid of death? Under normal circumstances, this kind of time was naturally the best time to attack. However, the third hall master was currently facing Xiaoyan. How could he dare to be careless in his heart? Hence, although the third hall master saw that Xiaoyan was training, he did not dare to act recklessly. As expected, the qi method in Xiaoyan's body circulated for only a few breaths' time before it came to a stop. Sensing the mottled natural energy around him, Xiaoyan lifted both of his hands. His eyes looked straight ahead as his hands began to change. One seal after another was formed by Xiaoyan's hands as Xiaoyan threw them out one by one. Chapter 63. Following the formation of the seal in Xiaoyan's hand, circular ripples of water like energy ripples began to spread around Xiaoyan's hands. It was a beautiful sight. However, the eyes of the third hall master suddenly shrunk to the size of a needle when these circular dark flower-like beautiful ripples spread out. The expression under the mask once again changed abruptly. His entire person instantly became frightened. Xiaoyan's expression was slightly pale at this moment. However, the movements of his hands did not pause at all. Instead, they were becoming increasingly faster. Xiaoyan formed the seal in his hands as he opened his mouth and coldly laughed at the third hall master. Since you are so familiar with my abilities, I think that you should also be extremely clear about this move that I am using right now. The third hall master swallowed the saliva that was stuck in his throat with great difficulty when he heard this. It was unknown whether it was because he was afraid or because of some other reason, but the third hall master paused for a long while before speaking in a trembling and dry voice. This is your second famous ultimate skill, Buddha. Angry Buddha reincarnation. Xiaoyan knew that he had already achieved his goal when he heard this. He lifted the corner of his mouth. His originally pale face appeared as white as paper under this mocking. He parted his mouth and laughed coldly. After which, he once again turned his attention to the dou skill in his hands. The third hall master was stunned by these words of Xiaoyan. His eyes were lifeless as he looked at the seal in Xiaoyan's hands. His mouth repeatedly muttered softly, "How is this possible? How is this possible? Didn't the news say that Xiaoyan has only mastered a Tian class dou skill? How is this possible? How is this possible?" It was no wonder that the third hall master would be so afraid. A Tian class dou skill was originally an extraordinary skill on the continent. Its strength was so great that it could break mountains and rivers. Although he was a 7-star half-emperor, he was unable to withstand the attack of a Tian class dou skill. Just by looking at the old flame demon ghost's failed Tian class dou skill, its strength was enough to cause a person of the third hall master's strength to spit out a mouthful of blood. From this, one could see just how powerful a Tian class dou skill was. As Xiaoyan's hand seals became faster and faster, a layer of gorgeous flames gushed out from the surface of Xiaoyan's body, wrapping Xiaoyan in flames. The heavenly flame was accompanied by energy ripples as it spread out in circles, completely enveloping the area within 1,000 feet of Xiaoyan. The heavenly flame spread out and bombarded the third hall master's body. The sudden high temperature caused the originally dull expression under the mask of the third hall master to instantly recover its clarity. His body, which was originally trembling, suddenly trembled. His eyes were filled with shock, and the expression on his face under the mask instantly tensed up. After taking a few steps back in the air, the third palace master finally reacted while panting. He looked at Xiaoyan, who was still changing the seals in his hands while his body was surrounded by flames. When the third palace master saw that the energy fluctuation around Xiao Yan's body was becoming more and more intense, he was suddenly startled. Only then did he completely wake up. The words that Xiao Yan had said earlier were just to distract the third palace master so that he could take the opportunity to use the angry Buddha cycle to kill him. At this moment, the third hall master had already understood in his heart. Xiao Yan clearly understood that although the angry Buddha cycle was currently a Tian class Do skill, his own strength was limited. It was impossible for him to directly kill the third hall master. Hence, he had used this move in order to distract the third hall master and take advantage of the latter's unpreparedness to forcefully kill him. Even though he would be seriously injured at that time, he would be able to keep his secret. When the third hall master thought of this in his heart, both of his eyes were instantly filled with a raging fury. However, within that fury, there was also an endless amount of fear. Xiao Yan's strength had exceeded their understanding of him. In this way, the mission this time around was much more difficult than before. It was likely that there was only a fine line between life and death. The third hall master looked at the wave after wave of beautiful fire waves around Xiao Yan's body. After which, he recalled how Xiao Yan had toyed with him earlier. The fury in his heart once again rose. The third hall master swept his gaze over the 7 black spots in the enormous pit below. His nose emitted a cold snort as his eyes suddenly became stern. He raised both of his hands and swiftly formed numerous strange seals on his fingertips. As the seals changed, circular dark black ink-like energy ripples spread out from the third hall master's fingertips. The black fog around the third hall master stirred and separated into 6 clusters. They covered the 6 black figures below. However, the old flame demon ghost was not among them. The 6 clusters of black fog carried long tails as they swiftly descended like meteorites. After which, they wrapped around the 6 seriously injured bodies. At the same time, the third hall master also emitted an explosive cry from his mouth. 10,000 ghosts devouring souls. Devour. Following this explosive cry of the third hall master, the 6 clusters of black fog below immediately emitted a gurgling chewing sound. It sounded incomparably horrifying. There were also waves of hoarse miserable cries within it, causing one to feel that it was incomparably bloody and cruel. A long while later, the miserable cries gradually disappeared. Only the crunching sound of bones being chewed remained. It sounded extremely ear-piercing. There was no longer any reaction from the pit below. However, if one turned his head to look at the third hall master, one would discover that the current third hall master had greatly changed compared to before. At this moment, the black fog that lingered around the third hall master's body appeared to be much denser. At a glance, it gave one a feeling of nothingness. The third hall master's aura was also much stronger than before due to the dense black fog all over his body. Not only had the injuries all over his body recovered, but his strength had also greatly increased. A black-colored armor covered his entire body in front of his chest. The appearance of the armor was exactly the same as the magical beast on the mask. Moreover, at this moment, the magical beast on the armor appeared incomparably alive. The magical beast's mouth was wide open. 2 black fangs pointed outwards. There was even some energy light that flowed within its mouth. It looked just like fresh blood. Moreover, this magical beast's eyes were also emitting some light. If one were to take a closer look, it actually seemed as though it possessed a soul. It was even more terrifying. Looking at Xiao Yan again, at this moment, the seals in Xiao Yan's hands were changing faster and faster. It was obvious that Xiao Yan had also sensed the extraordinariness of the third hall master's body. His heart also became a little anxious. After a long time, Xiao Yan finally reached the end. The third hall master had already prepared everything. He looked at Xiao Yan with a grave expression, waiting for Xiao Yan's sure kill attack to arrive. The third hall master naturally knew that he could not dodge it. It was also impossible for him to dodge it. Hence, he might as well directly attack. Finally, Xiao Yan's face was pale. His body was a little unstable as he came to a stop. The movements of his hands also slowly came to a stop. At this moment, there was a beautiful flame halo in the middle of his palm. It was emitting a bright light. In the middle of the halo, there was a thumb-sized dark black light spot that quietly floated. Immediately, Xiao Yan did his best to raise his arm. He faced the third hall master and spat out a sentence with great effort. Human class Do technique, Angry Buddha reincarnation. I know that this kind of chapter is particularly boring and doesn't have any main points. To put it bluntly, it's just water, but I still hope that everyone will like it and persevere for a while. After all, the necessary procedures still have to be followed. Otherwise, it would be meaningless to continue writing later. I hope that everyone can persevere for a while. It's not easy for an editor to write chapters. There are many things to do every day, but recently, even if I work overtime, I can only write 2 chapters. Actually, the reason is that I want everyone to agree and like it. Please recommend me. Chapter 64. Xiaoyan's face was pale. His body swayed slightly as he stood in the air. However, he still forced himself to aim the fire ring in his hand at the third hall master. With a thought, he pushed his hand forward with all his might. After the fire ring was aimed at the third hall master, the black light spot in the middle of the fire ring brightened slightly. Immediately, a loud bang sounded. 1,000-foot-thick black light pillar shot toward the third hall master. When the third hall master saw the black light pillar, his expression instantly became grave. He quickly lifted his armored arms and crossed them in front of his body. At the same time, the dou qi in his body surged out wildly. It turned into a 1,000-foot-long black energy shield in front of the third hall master. Among them, the defensive power of each energy shield was enough to block an all-out attack from a 3-star half-emperor. However, there were hundreds of such energy shields. From this, it could be seen that the third hall master had exhausted his strongest life-saving trump card in order to block Xiaoyan's attack. Bang! A loud ear-piercing sound spread across the sky, causing the entire sky to emit waves of vibrations. Some cracks also appeared in the space. The wild and ferocious energy storm swept across the sky. The originally incomparably large pit on the ground was once again forcefully torn apart by this powerful and unparalleled energy, forming a 1,000-foot-wide deep canyon. In the sky, there were still some clouds remaining. However, they were instantly blown away by this wild and ferocious storm. Only when one reached the distant horizon could one see a circular arc formed by clouds. Just as the pitch-black energy shield was formed, Xiaoyan's angry Buddha Samsara had also arrived. The moment the two collided, the pitch-black energy shield was easily destroyed by Xiaoyan's angry Buddha Samsara. It continued to charge until it was 100 feet away from the third hall master. Only then did it gradually slow down. The pitch-black energy shield emitted waves of pitch-black energy fog, blocking the advance of the black light pillar. Seeing this, Xiaoyan frowned slightly. Immediately, his eyes focused. As a thought passed through his mind, the pitch-black light pillar once again became a little thicker. Xiaoyan raised his left hand and grabbed his right wrist. Immediately, he clenched his teeth. His eyebrows were tightly knit together. He exerted force with both hands and pushed the fire ring forward. Bang! Under Xiaoyan's push with all his strength, the dark black energy light pillar finally broke through a couple of energy shields and charged forward for a distance of a couple of feet. The similarly pitch-black energy shield was absorbed by the pitch-black energy light pillar for some unknown reason after it exploded. It merged with the energy light pillar, causing the energy light pillar to become much more solid and powerful in the dark. The third hall master stepped through empty air and rubbed back 1,000 feet after being pushed by Xiaoyan with all his strength. Only then did he slowly stabilize his body. When the third hall master saw his energy shields explode one by one, his eyes were filled with a solemn expression. Moreover, the third hall master could feel a little disintegration in the black light pillar. At this moment, the third hall master could clearly sense that the energy shields protecting him were being disintegrated by the pitch-black energy light pillar. It was likely that it would not be long before these energy shields, which he had painstakingly formed by swallowing 6 people, would be broken one by Xiaoyan. The third hall master glanced at the energy shields that were still bitterly holding on. He then looked at the black armor on his body. His expression was grave. After a long while, the third hall master seemed to have made a great decision. His eyes suddenly focused, and the seal in his hands changed once again. The energy shields that were bitterly holding on also emitted a bang sound and suddenly shattered. They turned into black light spots that filled the sky and immediately returned to the third hall master's body. Bang! When the black energy returned to his body, the third hall master's aura instantly became tyrannical and powerful. Looking at the pitch-black energy light pillar that was about to hit his body, the third hall master's hand seals changed rapidly. Immediately, the moment the black light pillar was about to hit him, he let out a loud roar. Dark Spirit Palm. The third hall master let out an explosive cry from his mouth. At the same time, His right palm also violently struck out toward the dark black energy light pillar. Silence. A deathly silence. The moment the third hall master's palm came into contact with the black light pillar, the entire world instantly became silent. Xiao Yan and the third hall chief did not find this strange in their hearts. All physical violence originated from silence, and now, between the seemingly silent palm and the black beam of light, a battle of life and death was actually taking place. The content of the battle was the energy supply of both parties. However, Xiao Yan naturally did not need to worry about this. He had already used the angry Buddha reincarnation, and the energy within it was definitely sufficient. The only thing that was competing was the endurance of Xiao Yan and the third hall master. This situation did not last for long and would not last for long. In terms of the might of a Dou skill, the victor of this silent battle would only be Xiao Yan. Bang! An earth-shaking loud sound erupted. Wild and violent energy ripples also swept across the entire place. Xiao Yan and the third hall master were also sent flying by this frightening energy storm. Bang! Another loud sound appeared. Xiao Yan's body was violently smashed into the ground. When he landed, the force that it carried also flattened everything within 1,000 feet radius. Grug! Xiao Yan spat out a mouthful of blood. His originally pale face had become much redder. However, Xiao Yan's current condition could not be any worse. Several of the bones in his body had been broken. His body had also been seriously injured because of the energy storm. The current Xiao Yan could be said to be extremely weak. Looking at the third hall master again, the clothes of the current third hall master were completely torn. There was also a large pool of blood on his chest. However, his condition was clearly better than Xiao Yan's. Even until now, a portion of the third hall master's black armor was still intact. From this, one could tell just how shocking the defensive strength of this armor was. The third hall master stood up with great difficulty. He opened his palm and a jade bottle appeared in his palm. After consuming the medicinal pill, the third hall master ignored the injuries on his body and walked toward Xiao Yan with great difficulty. When the third hall master walked to 100 feet in front of Xiao Yan, the third hall master's body suddenly became soft. He sat down on the ground and no longer bothered about Xiao Yan. The third hall master panted heavily and withdrew his legs with great effort. He sat cross-legged on the ground and began to refine the medicinal strength of the medicinal pill within his body. Chapter 65. Xiao Yan lay in the ruins and lifted his head with great difficulty. He clenched his teeth and glanced at the third hall master, who was only 100 feet away from him. Immediately, he closed his eyes and his body softened as he lay down. He panted heavily, trying his best to make his body feel more comfortable. Xiao Yan's mind inspected his body and could not help but knit his eyebrows tightly together. At this moment, the chi paths in Xiao Yan's body were seriously damaged. They were basically broken inch by inch. The Dou Qi in his body had also completely disappeared. The enormous space in the middle of the vortex appeared incomparably empty at this moment. Xiao Yan forcefully endured the waves of intense pain that were emitted from his body. With a thought, a Longan-sized medicinal pill appeared in his blood-stained palm. A Tier 9 recovery pill. It had an extremely good effect on internal injuries. Its medicinal properties were also extremely gentle. It was an excellent medicinal pill for treating internal injuries. Xiao Yan forcefully turned his body around and swallowed the medicinal pill along with the fresh blood that surged out of his mouth. He panted a few times and narrowed his eyes as he began to refine the pill. A few hours later, the third hall master's body slowly stood up from the ground. His eyes were filled with resentment as he looked at Xiao Yan, who was still lying in the ruins with his eyes closed. The third hall master walked in front of Xiao Yan and once again violently panted a few times. The air was filled with the smell of blood. Immediately, he slowly lifted his right hand. In his seriously injured state, this action was extremely strenuous for the third hall master. However, he still forcefully bent his right hand into a claw and aimed it at Xiao Yan's chest before piercing it downward. Xiao Yan's shut eyes were suddenly opened as he sensed the dangerous aura that he was getting increasingly close to. Immediately, the muscles in his entire body suddenly tightened. His leg violently kicked the third hall master's chest. Grug! The third hall master was kicked to the ground by Xiao Yan's kick. He spat out a mouthful of blood from his mouth. Immediately, he fell to the ground and panted violently, unable to move. On the other hand, Xiao Yan's chest seemed to be filled with strength. His body suddenly straightened, and he flipped over from the ground.
However, from Xiao Yan's gloomy eyes, it could be seen that the current Xiao Yan was not as fierce as he looked on the surface.
Xiao Yan clenched his fists tightly, and all the muscles in his body tensed up. His throat rolled, and he swallowed a mouthful of blood. He then fiercely bit the tip of his tongue, and bit it until it was broken. The wound on the tip of his tongue triggered the nerves in his entire body. Xiao Yan's eyes glowed faintly.
Ignoring the third hall master who was lying on the ground, Xiao Yan moved his body and rushed out of the huge ruins in a somewhat sorry state.
Immediately after, he fiercely stomped on the void. His body trembled as he rushed into the distance, leaving behind drops of bright red blood wherever he passed. Boom! In a mountain forest, a bloody figure with tattered clothes fell from the sky and smashed into the ground. After rolling a few times, he stopped moving.
If it was not for the breath from his nose, anyone who saw him would have thought that he was a dead person.
After a long while, Xiao Yan slowly woke up amidst a coughing sound. His eyes swept around, checking everything in his surroundings. Haha, kid, not bad.
Although you are seriously injured, you can barely be considered to have profited from beating that damn thing to such a state.
Suddenly, an old voice sounded from the bottom of Xiao Yan's heart, causing Xiao Yan to be shocked. The loose muscles in his body once again tensed up. After hearing who it was, Xiao Yan finally relaxed. His tense body relaxed, and Xiao Yan instantly felt that all the muscles in his body were extremely sore. Waves of heart-wrenching pain were emitted from within his body. Xiao Yan's face became distorted, causing his already bloody face to appear even more frightening. Xiao Yan violently panted a couple of times.
He slowly suppressed the heart-wrenching pain that was emitted from within his body.
His heart roared at Guyu. Old man, can you speak first the next time you speak? You will end up killing me. Guyu smiled awkwardly upon hearing this, but he did not say anything else. Xiao Yan quietly cursed a couple of times in his heart before ignoring him. Both of his eyes were shut as he focused on refining the medicinal pill within his body. Although Xiao Yan had refined the medicinal pill within his body to treat his injuries during the time he had spent with the third hall master, there was still too little time. Hence, Xiao Yan did not completely refine the medicinal strength. Adding this to the fact that he had forcefully endured the kick from the third hall master earlier and had flown so far, the injuries within Xiao Yan's body, which had yet to recover, had become even more serious. If Xiao Yan did not take advantage of this moment to quickly heal his injuries, it was likely that he would really end up with some sequelae. A couple of hours later, Xiao Yan slowly opened his shut eyes. He moved his body slightly, but he still felt the same incomparable pain. Xiao Yan quietly sighed in his heart. A thought passed through his mind, and another Tier 9 recovery pill appeared in his palm. Xiao Yan forcefully swallowed the medicinal pill. He once again shut his eyes and calmly began to refine it. At the same time, at the place where Xiao Yan had fought with the third hall master and the others, a green-clothed old man was slowly rushing over from the distant horizon. At this moment, the mountain forest had already turned into ruins. Looking from above, one could only see a huge crater, as if it had been created by an asteroid. The third hall master and the flame demon old ghost had already disappeared. At this moment, a green-clothed old man was looking at everything with a gloomy face. After a long time, the old man sighed deeply and said to the sky, "Fellow Xiao Yan, the old me is Yuanqing. I have come late. If your spirit is in heaven, please believe the old me. The old me, Yuanqing, will use the remaining strength of my life to avenge you until my death. I will also give an explanation to the clan behind you." The moment these words were spoken, Xiao Yan, who was in the middle of refining the medicinal pill in the forest, suddenly sneezed for some unknown reason. It shook him until his entire body was incomparably sore. After pausing for a moment, Xiao Yan grimaced and opened his mouth to speak. "Which damn thing is cursing me to die now? When I recover from my injuries, I will definitely come and visit you." Humph. Ow. At the same time, thunderclouds suddenly gathered in the sky, and the heavenly might surged. Yuanqing raised his head to the sky and ignored it, wholeheartedly waiting for the heavenly thunder's oath. However, for some unknown reason, the thunderclouds that had just settled down quietly scattered before they could strike. This caused Yuanqing to be completely confused. After blinking a few times, he flew in a certain direction. Chapter 66. Swoosh swoosh, dark clouds filled the sky, shrouding the entire world, causing the originally bright day to turn into a dark night. Wild winds surged in the sky above the green forest as a huge whirlwind expanded across the land. Waves of energy continued to emerge from the sky. After which, they were swept into this whirlpool and disappeared in a flash. In the middle of the endless green forest, a young man in white was sitting cross-legged on a piece of green rock with his legs bent. The man's eyes were shut, and his face appeared a little pale. Both of his hands formed a training seal as he absorbed the natural energy for his own training. Waves of mottled natural energy fell from the huge whirlpool above his head. They gathered into a thick energy pillar that surged into the man's body from the Bai Hui acupoint on his head. After which, it was refined and absorbed by the man. This situation repeated for a couple of hours. Only after the energy whirlpool above the man's head slowly disappeared did the man withdraw from his training state. Xiaoyan slowly opened his eyes. A brilliant light flashed deep within his eyes. Soon after, the air in front of Xiaoyan became distorted. It was accompanied by tiny black lines. Qi, a towering ancient tree a couple of dozen feet away from Xiaoyan, suddenly emitted a qi sound. Immediately, it turned into tiny powder that scattered down. An unknown cold wind blew past and the powder disappeared. Hu! Xiaoyan deeply exhaled a mouthful of turbid air that had been suppressed in his chest. Both of his eyes narrowed once again. He lifted his head and gently inhaled the pure air. The corners of Xiaoyan's mouth lifted as he sensed the waves of comfort that were emitted from all over his body. After half a month of recovery, the injuries in my body are more or less healed. Haha, the strength of your physical body has exceeded my expectations. If it was an ordinary person, I'm afraid that it would take at least a couple of months to recover from such serious injuries. Tescase. Moreover, the dragon phoenix bloodline in your body. Tescase. They are all extraordinary things. The corners of Xiaoyan's mouth once again curled into a smile upon hearing this, but he did not reply. After such a long time, Xiaoyan was already used to Gu Yu's unpredictable appearance. Hence, he was not too surprised. Xiaoyan paused for a moment. The corner of his mouth carried a smile. His eyes suddenly became calm as he slowly opened his mouth and said, "Yes, I didn't expect my injuries to heal so quickly. And this it's all thanks to that black-clothed man." At the end of his words, Xiaoyan's originally calm tone suddenly turned cold, causing the temperature around Xiaoyan to abruptly drop. Shaking his head, Xiaoyan tossed these thoughts out of his mind. He straightened his body and twisted left and right. Then, with a violent shake, the blue stone Xiaoyan was sitting on shattered into a pile of dust. On the other hand, Xiaoyan was still sitting cross-legged on the spot, not moving at all. Upon closer inspection, Xiaoyan was actually sitting in the air. There was no need for the blue stone as a cushion. After resting for a moment, Xiaoyan's spiritual strength spread out. A thought passed through his mind and he heard the rustling sound of leaves within the forest. Then, a wild rabbit flew in front of Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan smiled and said indifferently, "Tonight, you can only eat me. I hope that you will have a good reincarnation in your next life." After that, Xiaoyan's spiritual power fluctuated again. Soon after, the fragrance of meat drifted out of the forest. The next day Xiaoyan's eyelids trembled as he slowly opened his eyes. With a flip of his right hand, a pill the size of a longan appeared in Xiaoyan's right palm. Tai Blood Recovery Pill. A Tier 9 golden pill. It was the pill with the fastest recovery rate among the Tier 9 pills. When used when seriously injured, it could speed up the recovery rate of the injury. Usually, it would take a month, but after using the Tai Blood Recovery Pill, half a month was enough. In this way, the efficacy of the Tai Blood Recovery Pill could be seen. But the only flaw was that the Tai Blood Recovery Pill's efficacy was too strong. It couldn't be used when seriously injured, so Xiaoyan didn't care too much about it at first and only refined a few pills. Now that he thought about it, Xiaoyan was quite glad. Although he didn't refine too many, these few pills were enough for his current situation. Otherwise, when the black-clothed man caught up with him and he was seriously injured, it would be too late for regrets. After taking the pill, Xiaoyan closed his eyes again and calmed his mind to refine it. The pill melted in his mouth and instantly turned into a scorching but not very strong energy flow, rushing into Xiaoyan's body. In Xiaoyan's body, a scarlet energy wave shuttled between his meridians and organs. Everywhere it passed, it was red. In this red, there was a tingling feeling. Coupled with the bursts of scorching heat, it made Xiaoyan feel that everything in his body was a little swollen. In the outside world,
Xiao Yan's face was flushed red, the veins on his forehead squirmed, and tiny beads of sweat overflowed from his forehead and slid down his cheeks. Looking at Xiao Yan's body, in the center of the cyclone, there was a scarlet bead, emitting bursts of scorching energy fluctuations. Waves of fiery red air waves swept out from Xiao Yan's body and spread to Xiao Yan's entire body. When the fiery red energy came into contact with Xiao Yan's muscles and organs, it directly immersed into them. At the same time, it also transmitted bursts of swelling pain to Xiao Yan, making Xiao Yan feel very uncomfortable. This repeated state lasted for a full 12 hours, and Xiao Yan was also tortured by the medicinal strength of the pill until he was somewhat numb. The clothes all over Xiao Yan's body were completely soaked in sweat, tightly sticking to his body. Finally, the medicinal strength of the Tai blood recovery pill was completely refined by Xiao Yan, immersing into all the organs and meridians in Xiao Yan's body, unceasingly healing the injuries in Xiao Yan's body for a long time. The instant the medicinal pill was completely refined, Xiao Yan's body became weak and he fell backward. He lay flat on the grass and quickly fell into a deep sleep.
Chapter 67. Half a month later. Wind howled in the sky. It was clearly the hot sun in the sky, but one could not feel even the slightest bit of warmth. The white-clothed Xiao Yan was seated on an empty ground in the forest. Both of his hands formed a seal and formed a training seal. Threads of natural energy involuntarily gathered toward Xiao Yan, after which, they were refined and absorbed by Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan withdrew from his training state 2 hours later. He sensed the abundant dou qi in his body and smiled faintly. Until today, the injuries that Xiao Yan had suffered in the fight with the Third Hall Masters group could be considered to have completely healed. The injuries on his body had healed, but the pain in Xiao Yan's heart had not lessened. His injuries had healed, but the injuries that the heavy Xian ruler had suffered from blocking the attack for him were still present. Xiao Yan flipped his hand and a huge black ruler appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. It was the heavy Xian ruler. Unfortunately, after the Third Hall Master's punch and palm, the heavy Xian ruler's body had already been replaced by cracks. At a glance, it seemed as though it would instantly fall apart if one were to gently bend it with one's hand. Xiao Yan used one hand to hold the huge ruler from below while his other hand gently rubbed the surface of the huge ruler. Xiao Yan could naturally use his strength to allow the heavy Xian ruler to float in the air. However, the heavy Xian ruler was currently on the verge of collapse. Additionally, Xiao Yan had various feelings for this heavy Xian ruler and Yao Lao. Even if he had the strength, how could he be at ease allowing it to float in the air? Xiao Yan's hand rubbed the tiny cracks on the heavy Xian ruler. His heart missed the days when he had carried the heavy Xian ruler and followed Yao Lao to roam the continent. Xiao Yan's expression was indifferent. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Gu Yu, who was within Xiao Yan's body, quietly nodded when he saw this. This person's character was so calm. He was able to remain so calm even when facing such a great enmity. He was extraordinary. An enemy who showed everything on his face was not scary. What was scary was an enemy who would still smile at you after suffering a loss. Because you often don't know how terrifying the abyss of hell is beneath that smile. After a long while, Xiao Yan's hands paused slightly. With a flash of light in his hand, the dark heavy buster sword was put into the storage ring by Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's figure moved, and in the next moment, a white-robed figure suddenly appeared on a mountain peak a few hundred miles away. Xiao Yan stood on top of the mountain peak with his hands behind his back. His soul power gushed out from Xiao Yan's forehead and spread out in all directions. A moment later, Xiao Yan frowned slightly. His figure flashed again and flew towards the depths of the mountain forest. 15 minutes later, Xiao Yan's advancing body paused slightly. His spiritual strength once again spread out, taking in everything within a radius of a few thousand miles into his eyes. 7 rank 9 magical beasts, 16 rank 8 magical beasts, 49 rank 7 magical beasts, over 100 rank 6 magical beasts, and even more. These magical beasts were suppressed by this powerful aura that had suddenly appeared when Xiao Yan probed. All of them lay on the ground submissively and did not even dare to make a sound. Xiao Yan's expression was indifferent. A cold glint flashed deep within his eyes. Soon after, he lifted his hand. A muffled bang sounded, and a cluster of brilliant flames rose from Xiao Yan's palm. The world suddenly became dry the moment the heavenly flame rose. Even a breath of air would cause one's throat to feel dry and painful. A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind, and the heavenly flame in his hand emitted a strange ripple.
In the next moment, before those magical beasts could react, they were turned into nothingness, leaving behind traces of pure blood and monster cores of various colors. A thought passed through Xiaoyan's mind. In the next moment, the sky was instantly replaced by monster cores that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. The heavenly flame in Xiaoyan's hand flew out and spread out, enveloping all of the monster cores. Amidst a sizzling sound, the monster cores were refined by the heavenly flame until only droplets of pure energy were left. A moment later, Xiaoyan flipped his palm again, and the heavy Xian ruler appeared in Xiaoyan's hand. In the space in front of Xiaoyan, a huge cluster of brilliant energy droplets was quietly floating. Xiaoyan pushed his palm forward, sending the heavy Xian ruler into the cluster of droplets. Immediately after, the seals in Xiaoyan's hands changed. In the next moment, a huge cluster of heavenly flame appeared in front of Xiaoyan and wrapped around the droplets. The heavenly flame completely enveloped the liquid droplets. Under the continuous refinement of the heavenly flame, the liquid droplets slowly merged with the heavy Xian ruler and repaired the body of the ruler.
Oh, what was that just now? Hiss, I seem to have heard of it. That is? The heavy Xian ruler? This is really surprising. The heavy Xian ruler has actually appeared. TSK.
While Xiaoyan was repairing the heavy Xian ruler, a young man wearing a green robe was curiously looking at Xiaoyan on a towering ancient tree 1,000 feet away from Xiaoyan.
Looks like something has happened to the heavy Xian ruler.
Is he trying to borrow the 10,000 beast blood and this pure energy to repair the heavy Xian ruler?
Haha, he is indeed too naive. How can the heavy Xian ruler be repaired so easily by you?
If that's the case,
haha, I will have to rely on you.
Haha. The young man looked at Xiaoyan's actions and softly muttered to himself. After dozens of hours, the huge cluster of energy droplets was finally completely immersed in the heavy Xian ruler. However, Xiaoyan was not happy at all. This was because, originally, he had planned to restore the heavy Xian ruler to its original state. But now, nothing had happened. There was not even the slightest sign of restoration.
Xiaoyan frowned and sighed.
After a long while, Xiaoyan finally opened his mouth and said, "The friend over there, after watching for so long, shouldn't you come out and meet me?"
Chapter 68.
Within the range of Xiaoyan's aura, Xiaoyan was able to clearly sense a somewhat obscure aura. The owner of this aura caused Xiaoyan's heart to slightly tighten. The reason for that was because this person's strength had actually reached the level of a 4-star half-martial emperor. Furthermore, from Xiaoyan's probing, this person's age did not exceed 35 years old. Such a young half-martial emperor expert was truly the first person that Xiaoyan had seen since he became an emperor. Although this aura had already been detected by Xiaoyan, due to the matter of repairing the heavy profound ruler, Xiaoyan had never mentioned it. Now that the heavy profound ruler's repair had failed, Xiaoyan naturally loathed the person who was spying on him. Although that person possessed some strength, his speed was not to be underestimated either. At the very most, he would be able to use another Buddha's angry samsara. Once Xiaoyan said those words, the azure-robed man 3,000 feet away from Xiaoyan also smiled in understanding. He smiled at Xiaoyan and replied, "Haha, it's quite troublesome to repair the heavy profound ruler." Seeing that this friend was going through such trouble to repair this ruler, I couldn't help but feel a bit curious. Thus, I stopped to take a look. Hearing those words, Xiaoyan frowned slightly. This person's tone was very gentle and did not contain the slightest trace of hostility. However, to Xiaoyan's surprise, this person actually began to talk about the heavy profound ruler. This caused Xiaoyan to feel a bit strange in his heart. After a long while, Xiaoyan probingly replied, "Since this is the case, you've already seen enough. Since that's the case and you've seen enough, shouldn't you leave?" Hearing those words, the man's brows slightly raised. The words to chase him away were truly straightforward. However, the man immediately reacted. With a thought, he softly laughed and said, "Haha, haha. Of course. Since this friend has ordered me to leave, if this one doesn't leave, it would seem somewhat shameless. Haha, this one will leave right away." Before he finished speaking, the man turned around and walked towards the depths of the mountain forest. However, before he left, he slightly tilted his head and glanced at Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's eyes flickered when he saw this. He had guessed something in his heart. Thus, when the man disappeared from Xiaoyan's sight, Xiaoyan's figure moved. He flew up from the mountain peak and chased after the man. 15 minutes later, one would be able to sense a faint pressure wherever one's aura reached. At the very least, this pressure was already unparalleled to those dozongs and dozuns. Even an elite do shang would likely have to be extremely cautious when they arrived at this place. At this moment, in the forest, in a slightly remote cave, a huge beast covered with tiger stripes was quietly sleeping. Gusts of wind blew out from its nose as it breathed in and out. From the looks of its aura, this magical beast had already reached the advanced level of a rank 9 magical beast. Its strength was comparable to a human 8-star do shang. It was the overlord-level expert of this region. All of a sudden, the giant beast's bell-sized eyes abruptly opened. The hairs all over its body stood on end. Its bloodthirsty eyes were currently covered by a terrifying aura. A rank 9 magical beast's intelligence was quite high. Although it did not know why the high-rank magical beasts on this continent did not know how to transform, their intelligence was clearly displayed. Just a moment ago, this king of the forest had sensed an extremely frightening pressure in an instant. Although the owner of the pressure had already withdrawn, the faint remnant might that was revealed still caused it to feel a kind of terror that could destroy both its body and soul. After a couple of breaths, the owner of the aura finally left this place under the probing of this magical beast. However, before it could relax, another aura flashed by in the next instant. This tiger-shaped magical beast once again trembled. Although this aura was a little weaker than the previous one, this magical beast did not dare to act recklessly. A green-robed human figure slowly came to a stop at the edge of the sky in the outside world. Xiaoyan's figure had also caught up 10,000 feet behind him. The man turned around and saw. A surprised expression flashed across his eyes. Xiaoyan's speed had clearly shocked him. Teskeske, this speed is something that only I can catch up to if I use all my strength. However, he is able to do it so easily. Looks like he does have some tricks up his sleeve. Seeing that Xiaoyan's speed was even faster than his, the man was merely a little surprised. The expression on his face was once again dominated by a smile. However, this is even more to my liking. It is likely that I might really be able to borrow his strength to succeed. The man's mouth softly muttered. Xiaoyan's figure had also arrived in front of him from the distance. The green-robed man smiled as he looked at the calm and composed Xiaoyan in front of him. He opened his mouth and laughed. Hee, friend, speed is really beyond my expectation. As the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. Not to mention that the man in front of him spoke in such a calm tone. Xiaoyan's tone was naturally gentle. Hee, I just have some tricks up my sleeve. After all, it's impossible to not have any means to escape when you are outside. The man didn't say much after hearing Xiaoyan's casual words. He smiled and said to Xiaoyan again, I think you must have a reason to follow me. The man's words were flat. There was no trace of doubt in his words. Xiaoyan also smiled and said, Since you have a way to repair my ruler, I will naturally follow you. Hearing this, the man's smile became even brighter. He nodded and said with a smile, I just like to deal with smart people. It is convenient and fast. Since this is the case, let's get to know each other first. The man cupped his hands and said with a smile, I am Luo Jin. Xiaoyan quietly remembered this name in his heart when he heard this. After which, he smiled slightly and returned the courtesy as he opened his mouth and said, I am Yan Xiao. Chapter 69. Luo Jin's eyes flashed when he heard this. He smiled at Xiaoyan and cupped his hands together. Brother Yan Xiao, nice to meet you. Xiaoyan also smiled and cupped his hands together. Brother Luo Jin, nice to meet you. Luo Jin nodded his head and did not say any more pleasantries. Instead, he went straight to the point. Brother Yan Xiao, the crack on this huge ruler of yours has already reached deep into its core. If you are careless, it is likely that it will break into two. At that time, it is likely that it will be impossible for you even if you merge all the natural treasures in the world. And your previous act of forcefully fusing will only worsen the damage of this giant ruler. If you do it again, I'm afraid this giant ruler will be destroyed. Xiaoyan's expression changed slightly when he heard this. By saying this, if the heavy Xian ruler were to really break into two, he would instead become the main culprit who had caused all of this. When he thought of this and thought of the importance of the heavy Xian ruler to himself, Xiaoyan instantly felt a sense of guilt deep in his soul. Fortunately, all of this did not happen. Otherwise, it was likely that Xiaoyan would really go berserk and find the third hall chief to kill and take revenge. Xiaoyan's eyes and mouth twitched slightly. His throat rolled and he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Then, he woke up from Luo Jin's words. After thanking Luo Jin, Xiao Yan immediately opened his mouth to ask Luo Jin in an anxious manner. May I ask Brother Luo, what is the restoration method that you know? This giant ruler is very important to me. I hope Brother Luo can tell me. When Luo Jin heard this, he did not directly answer. Instead, he asked Xiao Yan another question. Luo Jin rubbed his chin with one hand. After his eyes turned a few times, he asked Xiao Yan as if he was guessing. Brother Yan Xiao, if I'm not wrong, the material used to forge your giant ruler should be the rare meteoric flame mysterious iron, right? When Xiao Yan heard this, he raised his eyebrows slightly. He was a little puzzled as to why Luo Jin would ask such a question. However, he still nodded his head in agreement. Luo Jin seemed to have expected Xiao Yan's doubts. Without waiting for Xiao Yan to ask, he continued to speak with a smile. The restoration method that I spoke of is related to this meteorite mysterious iron. Hearing this, Xiao Yan's eyes lit up. If that was the case, it was indeed the best way to repair the dark heavy buster sword. The heavy Xian ruler was originally forged from the flaming meteorite mysterious iron. It was naturally extremely easy to repair it with the flaming meteorite mysterious iron. Of course, Xiao Yan had already thought of such a simple method. But how could the meteorite mysterious iron be so easy to find? The meteorite mysterious iron was one of the rare weapon materials on the continent and it was extremely rare. Each time it appeared, it would cause a storm on the continent and cause the continent to tremble. Xiao Yan had thought that the meteorite mysterious iron used to forge his dark heavy buster sword might be the last piece in the world. However, from the looks of it now, this was not the case. When Xiao Yan heard Luo Jin's words, he roughly understood. No wonder Luo Jin wanted to ask him about the materials used to forge the dark heavy buster sword. It seemed that he knew where to find the meteorite mysterious iron. Xiao Yan was relieved and turned his gaze to Luo Jin. Luo Jin did not say anything and smiled at Xiao Yan and nodded his head. When Xiao Yan saw this, he was even more delighted. However, Luo Jin's words immediately caused Xiao Yan's expression to instantly turn grave. After Luo Jin nodded his head at Xiao Yan, he said, I do know where to find the meteorite mysterious iron. I do indeed know where the meteorite mysterious iron is. Furthermore, I know that it is a piece of meteorite mysterious iron that is several tens of feet wide. Merely, there is a person there. His strength is roughly that of an 8-star half-martial emperor. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth twitched a few times. However, in order to repair the dark heavy buster sword, Xiao Yan endured it. Furthermore, to be precise, he is not a person. Instead, he is a magical beast. A high-rank magical beast that has transformed into a human form. The few words high-rank magical beast were especially emphasized by Luo Jin, causing Xiao Yan's expression to become even more serious. A magical beast that was comparable to an 8-star half-martial emperor was indeed a little too terrifying for Xiao Yan. After a long while, Xiao Yan turned his gaze back to Luo Jin and asked with a frown. Since that is the case, I believe Brother Luo also has something that you want, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to cooperate with me. When Luo Jin heard this, he revealed a slightly embarrassed smile. With a smile he explained to Xiao Yan, For me, it is very troublesome. For me alone, this is indeed a little troublesome. If I'm not careful, I might lose my life. However, now that there are two of us, the chances of success will naturally be higher. When Xiao Yan heard this, the expression on his face was still somewhat unnatural. However, in order to repair the dark heavy buster sword, Xiao Yan was willing to go all out. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes and asked Luo Jin, Brother Luo, since you know so much about the item in that magical beast's hand and how powerful it is, I believe Brother Luo is already quite familiar with it. In that case, Brother Luo, please explain the origin of this magical beast. When Luo Jin heard this, he knew that Xiao Yan was already on the boat. Therefore, he directly opened his mouth and said, That magical beast is called the Cloud-Splitting Wolf. It is a magical beast in the magical beast world that is known for its tyrannical physical body. The strength of its physical body is enough to tear a 3-star half-martial emperor to pieces. It lives in the deepest part of the Lianyun mountain range, the Green Ridge mountain range. It lives alone and there is not a single magical beast that is somewhat tyrannical within a radius of several tens of thousands of miles. Xiao Yan knit his brows slightly when he heard this. It seemed that the deterrence of this cloud-splitting wolf was quite great. It was able to occupy such a large mountain range just by living alone. He really did not know whether or not no one would be allowed to stay on this continent if his strength was a little stronger. Xiao Yan exclaimed for a while. Then, he could not help but sigh in his heart. It is still good to have strength. No one dares to invade. Ghost Temple Sect, although I do not know why you know so much about me, since you insist on making me attack, then next time, don't blame me. Chapter 70. Since this is the case, Brother Luo, when should we leave? Xiao Yan sighed emotionally in his heart before opening his mouth to ask Luo Jin. Although his tone was calm, Luo Jin was able to hear a thread of urgency. Luo Jin smiled as he looked towards the horizon. His eyes were filled with wisdom. In the horizon, a patch of red clouds gathered high up in the sky. The scorching sun that had been burning for an entire day had already sunk into the western mountains. Evening quietly arrived. When Xiao Yan saw this, his eyebrows gently raised. Given his intelligence, he naturally understood a little. Xiao Yan nodded his head. He also looked at the fiery red sunset and said without turning his head, "Is it because the sky is turning dark?" Luo Jin smiled again and nodded his head. His tone was calm as he said, "This cloud-splitting wolf can borrow the power of the moon to strengthen himself during the night. Furthermore, the darkness of the night and his wolf tribe's innate speed. If we really go and find him, even if you and I use all our strength, we will not be able to last more than 300 rounds against him." When Xiao Yan heard this, he softly sighed. Immediately, he sat down and closed his eyes to focus on his cultivation. Luo Jin's eyebrows slightly raised and he smiled. This was truly a cultivation maniac. Even at such a time, he was still going all out to cultivate. Luo Jin gently shook his head and closed his eyes. Spiritual energy spread out from his body and in a few breaths' time, he brought the 2 wild rabbits back. Deep in the night, in the forest, a bonfire was emitting flames. When it shone on the surrounding grass and ancient trees, it was as if a thin layer of golden paint had been applied to them. Xiao Yan and Luo Jin sat cross-legged on the ground. Some light was reflected on their faces. Their dark black hair had also turned golden yellow. Luo Jin tore off a piece of meat that was dripping oil from the bonfire and handed it to Xiao Yan. "Haha, perhaps it was not roasted well. I hope Brother Yan Xiao will forgive me." Xiao Yan smiled and nodded his head. He took the piece of meat from Luo Jin's hand and took a bite. However, in the next instant, Xiao Yan's action of swallowing his food suddenly paused. His entire face immediately turned green. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth twitched slightly. He stared at Luo Jin with an ugly expression and did not say a word. When Luo Jin saw this, he thought that Xiao Yan was suspecting him. He hurriedly opened his mouth to explain. "Brother Yan Xiao, I did not put poison in it. This is the first time we met. How could I have the intention to harm you?" Xiao Yan's face remained green when he heard this. His expression appeared to be somewhat speechless toward this Luo Jin. A long while later, Xiao Yan finally stuck out his tongue. His face twitched slightly and his words were unclear as he opened his mouth to speak with a messy tone. You have never cooked." When these words came out, Luo Jin's expression suddenly froze. He smiled awkwardly and lowered his head without saying a word. Xiao Yan also smiled. He did not expect that Luo Jin did not even know how to cook. He really did not know how he survived in the wilderness. Luo Jin appeared to know what Xiao Yan was thinking in his heart. He once again smiled awkwardly before speaking in an embarrassed manner. "In the past, I would only come out after I had bought enough dry rations. Therefore, I have never cooked for myself." Xiao Yan was helpless. This method was really strange. Xiao Yan did not know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. With a thought, spiritual energy quickly spread out from between his eyebrows and spread in all directions. In a few breaths, 2 fat wild rabbits flew in front of Xiao Yan. With a thought, Xiao Yan had already packed up the rabbits under Luo Jin's envious gaze. Very quickly, the 2 rabbits were sprinkled with seasoning. Just one look at them would make one's appetite soar and they appeared in front of Luo Jin's eyes. Without any hesitation, Luo Jin stretched out his hands and hugged one of the rabbits. His mouth began to eat in big bites. Xiao Yan smiled and also tore off a rabbit leg from the roasted meat and ate in big bites. The night passed just like that. The next day a ray of sunlight passed through the layers of trees and shone on the ground in front of the two. The moment the sunlight shone in, the two who were originally sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed suddenly opened their eyes. The two of them looked at each other and nodded. They stood up together and flew into the depths of the forest. At this moment, the two of them were moving in unison. Although they each had their own strengths, Xiaoyan's methods perfectly made up for everything. The two of them were like good friends who had known each other for many years. They were extremely close. As the two of them flew, Xiaoyan turned his head and asked Luo Jin, "Brother Luo, have you thought of a plan? Otherwise, when the two of us fight against the cloud-splitting wolf together, I'm afraid it will be a little dangerous." Hearing this, the corners of Luo Jin's mouth curled into a confident arc. He turned his head and smiled at Xiaoyan as he replied, "Of course. Otherwise, with the strength of the two of us, it will really be difficult to deal with him."
Oh haha. Then, what is Brother Luo's plan? Let me hear it. It will be easier for us to act when the time comes.
Hearing this, Luo Jin nodded his head and continued to speak to Xiaoyan. Although the cloud-splitting wolf's strength is terrifying, it is extremely afraid of sunlight. When the time comes, the two of us will work together to lure it out of his cave. You will block his cave and I will use one of my Do techniques to injure it the moment it is suppressed by the sunlight.
I will use this to delay it.
As for you, you only need to go to his cave and obtain the things that both of us need."
Xiaoyan nodded his head in agreement.
However, he immediately frowned and opened his mouth to ask, "May I know what Brother Luo wants?"
At that time, it will be easier for me to obtain it.
Heaven Imperial Jade Essence.
A green-blue spirit stone.
At its location, there should be many Heaven Imperial flowers growing. This can be refined into a high-tier medicinal pill and is beneficial to your cultivation.
You can take it.
However, I hope that you can help me obtain the Heaven Imperial Jade Essence. If I obtain it, I will owe Brother Yan Xiao a huge favor.
I, Luo Jin, will first thank you."
Saying this, Luo Jin stopped in the air and cupped his hands heavily at Xiaoyan. He bowed slightly and expressed his gratitude to Xiaoyan.
Chapter 71.
Xiaoyan quietly nodded in his heart when he saw how sincere Luo Jin's attitude was. Not only was Luo Jin meticulous, but he was also very magnanimous. Xiaoyan felt reassured to work with him. Moreover, after interacting with him for such a short period of time, Xiaoyan could tell that Luo Jin was likely an outstanding disciple from some faction. Additionally, Luo Jin was an easygoing person. Hence, Xiaoyan had a good impression of Luo Jin. He extended his hand and courteously thanked Luo Jin. After which, the two of them once again flew towards the Lianyun mountain range.
"Tieskese.
This little fellow is not simple."
Xiaoyan's eyes flashed as he flew.
He asked Gu Yu in his heart, "Elder Gu, what is this?"
"Elder Gu, what do you mean by that? Could it be that I was deceived by him?" The person who had spoken was naturally Gu Yu.
Xiaoyan's heart was slightly shaken after hearing Gu Yu's words. Hence, he asked Gu Yu with some lingering fear. Gu Yu softly chuckled upon hearing this. He said, "Don't worry. I do not know if there is a problem with this little fellow, but the thing he wants is not ordinary."
Xiaoyan lifted his eyebrows slightly.
He asked Gu Yu in his heart again, "Elder Gu, are you talking about the Heavenly Imperial Jade Essence that he wants?"
"Yes."
Xiaoyan involuntarily frowned. He was just about to ask when Gu Yu quickly spoke. The Heavenly Imperial Jade Essence is a natural treasure. It contains extremely pure natural energy. If it is refined and absorbed by someone, that person's strength will definitely soar. This is especially true for a little fellow at the half-emperor level like you. If you use the Heavenly Imperial Jade Essence, your strength will definitely soar. Xiaoyan was slightly startled when he heard this. He originally thought that it was already very good that Luo Jin had told him about the Heavenly Imperial Flower. He did not expect that Luo Jin had hidden such a great treasure. However, the effectiveness of the Heavenly Imperial Jade Essence depends on how much natural energy it absorbs. Normally, if it's a piece of Heavenly Jade Essence that's more than 1,000 years old, the energy it contains is enough to raise your cultivation level by 2 levels. Therefore, I believe that you already have an answer in your heart. Xiaoyan nodded slightly. Since that is the case, I will do my best to help him obtain the Heavenly Imperial Court Jade Essence. This way, it can be considered as me repaying him for helping me find the meteorite mysterious iron. Gu Yu was speechless when he heard this. There were clearly a few big items waiting for him, yet he wanted to give them to others after obtaining them. This was really too much. However, Gu Yu thought about it and nodded. He was full of praise for Xiao Yan in his heart. He had a steady temperament, knew how to be grateful, and would not be swayed by petty benefits. He could indeed be considered a moldable talent. Time passed, and the two of them had already entered the Lianyun mountain range. They continued walking towards the depths of the mountain range. The moment the two of them entered the Lianyun mountain range, there was a huge cave in the depths of the Lianyun mountain range. A tall and straight man with a head full of silver hair was seated on the ground. His originally narrowed eyes suddenly opened at this moment as he looked towards Xiao Yan and Luo Jin's direction. The man frowned slightly, snorted softly, and muttered to himself, "That's right." He muttered to himself, "A 2-star half-emperor and a 4-star half-emperor. With such strength, they actually dare to enter my territory. They must be tired of living." After his voice sounded, the man once again narrowed his eyes and continued to sit on the ground. He quietly waited for Xiao Yan and Luo Jin's arrival. A moment later, Xiao Yan and Luo Jin's figures finally appeared in the depths of the Lianyun mountain range. Xiao Yan and Luo Jin's figures stood side by side in front of the huge cave entrance. They both looked at the huge cave entrance in front of them. This cave also matched the character of the cloud-splitting wolf. Within 100 feet of the cave, it had already turned into a pitch-black world. Obviously, this was the work of the cloud-splitting wolf. Moreover, Xiao Yan and Luo Jin could clearly feel that there was a restriction within the cave that could avoid all probing. Hence, unless they personally entered the cave, they would not be able to know what was going on in the cave. Without much hesitation, the two of them moved and entered the pitch-black mountain cave. At the same time, in the depths of the cave, the cyan-clothed man's eyes suddenly opened. The hand seals in his hands changed. Roar! 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 A violent roar that shook the mountain was emitted from the man's mouth. The violent roar reverberated in the cave and traveled into Xiao Yan and Luo Jin's ears. Hearing this terrifying roar, Xiao Yan and Luo Jin's expressions changed simultaneously. However, the two of them were not ordinary people. After being shocked for a moment, Xiao Yan resisted the dizziness in his head and changed the hand seals in his hands. Then, Yellow Spring Divine Fury. Another roar resounded within the cave, completely suppressing the sudden roar that came out of nowhere. In the depths of the cave, when the cyan-clothed man heard Xiao Yan's violent roar, he frowned slightly and a trace of anger appeared on his face. He was a magical beast and a wolf-type magical beast that was most sensitive to roars. Xiao Yan's violent roar naturally infuriated him. The cyan-clothed man's body shook and he stood up from the ground. His eyes were immediately enveloped by a bloodthirsty killing intent. Xiao Yan's roar made him feel a sense of provocation. Hence, after standing up, his body shook again and he disappeared from the spot. If it were not for the pair of inch-deep footprints on the ground, anyone would have thought that the figure just now was just an illusion. The echoes in the cave gradually dissipated and Xiao Yan also stopped. Luo Jin was still a little dizzy, but his body shook and he regained his consciousness. Luo Jin first let out a long breath. After which he said to Xiao Yan, "Brother Yan Dong is really strong. The Dong Mountain roar of the cloud-splitting wolf is extremely powerful. Even an expert of the same level would have to be careful when dealing with it. If it was used at a close distance, using the echoes in the cave to cause the opponent to lose focus for a short period of time, there is a possibility that the cloud-splitting wolf would directly kill the opponent. However, it is unexpected that the Dong Mountain roar of the cloud-splitting wolf would be resolved by Brother Yan Xiao. You are really powerful." The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth twitched when he heard this. This was originally a very simple matter. If an expert of the same level had to be careful, then he could only blame himself for not having a sonic dough technique. Roar! Which rascal dares to come to Qinggang Mountain and provoke me, Yun Lang? Chapter 72. I have not written it for a couple of months. I don't know if I will be able to perfectly connect with the previous plots. This chapter might be a little better than the previous chapters, but I still hope that everyone can give me some opinions. It would be even better if there were a few recommendation votes. Chapter 72. Fighting Yun Lang. A furious roar was emitted from deep within the cave. The rumbling sound caused Xiao Yan and Luo Jin to feel a piercing pain in their eardrums. The muscles on their faces twitched involuntarily. Their expressions changed slightly. Xiao Yan and Luo Jin exchanged glances before their bodies quickly pulled back and retreated out of the cave.
Ha!
Since you have come, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Stay behind. Xiao Yan and Luo Jin had just retreated. They had yet to completely exit the cloud-splitting wolf's cave when Yun Lang's ear-piercing roar was once again emitted. Yun Lang's body suddenly shook from deep within the cave. The wild and violent Do Qi within his body spread in all directions, causing the entire mountain to involuntarily shake. Yun Lang's body suddenly disappeared. At the same time, the bodies of Xiao Yan and Luo Jin, who were retreating out of the cave, stilled. Xiao Yan's expression changed drastically. The Do Qi within his body instantly surged to the surface of his body. The heavenly flame spat out and swiftly agglomerated into a heavenly flame armor on the surface of his body, protecting him within it. The footwork of Yun Lang's feet changed as he unleashed the sky extinction step. His body flashed and a fist violently smashed toward Xiao Yan's back.
Bang!
An instant later, Xiao Yan's body flashed and appeared from a corner of the cave. His body involuntarily collided with the cave wall. With a bang, nearly 1/3 of the surface area of the enormous Qinggang mountain was destroyed. The outside world of the other mountains also had a Do Qi barrier vaguely flickering, protecting the entire mountain within it. However, from the looks of it now, it was likely that even this tough Do Qi barrier would not be able to endure for long. The power of this punch was actually so terrifying. Just the power of this punch was enough to blast apart a mountain, and this was only the result of Xiao Yan being sent flying. If this punch were to land solidly on this mountain, it was likely that in an instant, this 1,000 feet tall Qinggang mountain would instantly turn into a pile of dust. Luo Jin's heart was involuntarily startled when he saw Xiao Yan being sent flying. The expression on his face instantly became solemn. The true strength of this cloud-splitting wolf was actually this frightening. It had already exceeded his expectations. Luo Jin's face was filled with shock when he saw Xiao Yan being sent flying. Although he had not interacted with Xiao Yan for a long time, Luo Jin had a very good impression of Xiao Yan. Living outside, Luo Jin would naturally not give up on having another friend. Luo Jin's body moved and appeared in front of Xiao Yan in a flash. He helped Xiao Yan up and his spiritual strength followed Xiao Yan's palm and entered Xiao Yan's body to check on Xiao Yan's injuries.
Who dares to spy on my primordial spirit?
The spiritual strength had just entered Xiao Yan's body when a furious cry that contained a ruthless killing intent was emitted from Xiao Yan's body. Luo Jin's expression also suddenly became surprised. The instant the spiritual strength entered Xiao Yan's body, a wave of extremely hot flame energy suddenly charged toward Luo Jin's spirit. Luo Jin's expression was startled. However, he also knew that this fellow should be related to Xiao Yan. Hence, he did not recklessly charge in. Instead, he chose to withdraw decisively.
Yes.
Luo Jin controlled his spiritual strength and quickly withdrew. However, even so, Luo Jin's spirit was still eroded by the wild and ferocious flame energy. His entire body involuntarily trembled. His teeth were tightly clenched and the veins on his forehead were about to burst. Beads of sweat flowed out from the pores on his back, drenching a large portion of his clothes. Luo Jin's spiritual strength suddenly trembled. Only then did he regain his senses. His eyes still revealed an astonished expression as he looked at Xiao Yan. The flame energy was not very strong. This was why Luo Jin was not worried even though he was astonished when the flame attacked him. It was also because of this that when the flame attacked Luo Jin's spirit, it caused Luo Jin to instantly sober up. That flame actually possessed an extraordinary amount of damage to the spirit. While he was still staring at Xiao Yan in shock, Xiao Yan pushed him aside. A fist passed through Luo Jin's chest and bombarded Luo Jin's back.
Bang!
With an explosion, Xiao Yan's body flew backwards. Before he could stop, a figure appeared behind Xiao Yan. A fist was violently thrown towards Xiao Yan's back. Xiao Yan's body forcefully flashed and returned to Yun Lang's side. The Do Qi in his body surged out like floodwaters. With a thought, Xiao Yan's body suddenly transformed into a 99-foot-tall golden giant. The giant's entire body was covered with flickering purple-gold dragon scales. A pair of large fists had also transformed into dragon claws. A glint flashed in his bright golden glass-like eyes as a fist was suddenly thrown toward Yun Lang. A wild and ferocious wind was accompanied by an overbearing fist that tore through space as it violently smashed toward Yun Lang. The space became distorted wherever it passed and the land shook. An ear-piercing sonic boom caused the eardrums of all the magical beasts within a 1,000-mile radius to burst and fresh blood flowed. In an instant, the entire Lian Yun mountain range had turned into a sea of blood. Yun Lang did not feel much surprise in his heart at this powerful attack from Xiao Yan. His body explosively withdrew by 1,000 feet as he let out a furious roar at the sky. The tiny human body from a moment ago had transformed into a 1,000-foot-tall enormous beast in an instant. The cloud-splitting wolf was indeed worthy of being an 8-star half-martial emperor. With merely a glance, its enormous body had already covered over half of the sky. In an instant, the area within a circumference of 100 feet had turned dusky. At this moment, even Xiao Yan with his King Kong glass body was like an adult in front of a newborn baby in front of the cloud-splitting wolf. The cloud-splitting wolf let out a long roar as its body stood up like a human. Standing in the air, its large and sharp wolf claws ruthlessly swatted toward Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's heart did not dare to slight this claw even a little. His body suddenly shook and a monstrous aura suddenly erupted from within his body. A thought passed through his mind and the large golden mouth suddenly widened. Yellow Spring Divine Wrath. The might of the Yellow Spring Divine Wrath shook the heavens. However, the cloud-splitting wolf did not show any signs of weakness as it opened its mouth and let out a heaven-piercing roar. Dong Mountain Roar. 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 The two attacks collided and the space suddenly shook violently. The space at the center was violently distorted for a while before it suddenly shattered and turned into a pitch-black void. As the space shattered, Xiao Yan's Yellow Spring Divine Wrath was the first to be destroyed by the Dong Mountain Roar and bombarded toward Xiao Yan. This was something that Xiao Yan had already expected. After all, this Yun Lang was a genuine 8-star half-martial emperor. It would be difficult for him, a 2-star half-martial emperor, to engage in an all-out fight with him. The heavenly fire in his body suddenly gushed out and covered the entire giant golden fist. The intense heat caused the entire world to dry up in an instant. The forest below instantly turned into an endless sea of fire that spread in all directions. The ground also turned into cracked yellow soil, and the hard rocks gradually melted into blazing hot magma. Earth Astral Flame. Explode. Once again, Yun Lang let out an explosive roar in his heart. A magma fire pillar surging with tyrannical and fierce flame energy suddenly gushed out from the earth vein. With a tyrannical aura that could tear apart space, it pierced a hole through the Dong Mountain Roar. When the fire pillar dissipated, the cloud-splitting wolf Yun Lang was startled. After the fire pillar, Xiao Yan's enormous figure had already disappeared. There was only a gradually dissipating golden light where he stood. Octane Blast. Suddenly, Xiao Yan's explosive roar sounded from behind Yun Lang. At this moment, Xiao Yan's entire body danced as he charged toward Yun Lang. At this moment, every joint in Xiao Yan's body had turned into the most powerful weapon. His moves were grand and fierce. His tyrannical power was strong enough to flatten the Qinggang mountain with a casual strike. At this very moment, even Yun Lang, who was standing in front of Xiao Yan, couldn't help but feel shocked by the strength of Xiao Yan's physical body. However, the cloud-splitting wolf was, after all, a magical beast. Magical beasts were naturally proud of their physical bodies. Now that it saw that a human's physical body was so tyrannical, how could the cloud-splitting wolf be willing to accept this? Not daring to underestimate him, the cloud-splitting wolf's body suddenly turned and evenly distributed all the strength in its body to every part of its body. The muscles all over its body tightened like steel, and its upright body instantly charged forward, fiercely colliding with Xiao Yan. How could the strength that was raised in an instant be able to forcefully push back Xiao Yan? The fierce collision caused the space between the man and beast to explode with a loud bang. The strength between the two was completely unleashed at this moment, causing the entire world to tremble in fear. Violent waves of air swept out, and in an instant, there were no clouds in the surrounding 1,000 miles. Although there was sunlight shining down, this world was still wrapped in a layer of ice aura that was like an ice house, causing people to unconsciously feel fear in their hearts. The cloud-splitting wolf was, after all, an 8-star half-martial emperor. Its tyrannical strength allowed it to firmly stand in an undefeatable position. In merely a short moment, Xiao Yan was already somewhat strenuous. Looking back at the cloud-splitting wolf, although its aura was also somewhat unstable, it was much better than Xiao Yan. Seeing this, the cloud-splitting wolf couldn't help but coldly snort in its heart. The dou qi within its body gathered on its sharp claws, and the strength of its claws abruptly increased. The fierce Dou Qi exploded at the point of contact with Xiao Yan, and with a single claw, it sent Xiao Yan flying. However, at the instant when Xiao Yan was sent flying, the cloud-splitting wolf frowned in its heart. It felt that something wasn't quite right, but it was unable to pinpoint what it was. In the blink of an eye, it saw that Xiao Yan had been sent flying. Wasn't this a great opportunity? Just as it was about to step forward and give Xiao Yan a quick death, an intense feeling of danger suddenly rose in its heart. The Dou Qi within its body swiftly circulated throughout its entire body. Following which, its body suddenly shook, and a fierce and overbearing force suddenly shot out from the cloud-splitting wolf's claw. It exploded in the air, causing numerous black lines to appear in the surrounding space. Seeing this, the cloud-splitting wolf was instantly enraged. The force that it had forced out from its body earlier was actually a hidden force. Moreover, from the explosive nature of this force, if it were to really explode in its body, even if it wasn't seriously injured, it would at least leave behind a layer of skin. With a flash, Xiao Yan, who had yet to stop his body, was just about to make a move when a fierce fist wind shot over from the side. This cloud-splitting wolf had actually transformed back into its human form. However, the force of this fist was even stronger. Moreover, its speed was so fast that it was impossible to dodge. All he could do was forcefully receive it. In an instant, Xiao Yan gathered all the Dou Qi in his body on the surface of his body. The Dragon Phoenix Ancient Armor and the King Kong Glass Body were both activated to the maximum as he waited for the next attack. An ant's body actually wants to shake the heavens. You are really seeking death. Hand over your life. When the cloud-splitting wolf arrived in front of Xiao Yan, it involuntarily let out a cold laugh in its heart when it saw that Xiao Yan still wanted to make a final gamble. Following which, a fist violently smashed into Xiao Yan's chest. Crack, with a crisp sound, the King Kong Glass Body suddenly burst apart. Xiao Yan also returned to his original size. However, the fist wind did not diminish in the slightest as it continued to violently smash into the Dragon Phoenix Ancient Armor on the surface of Xiao Yan's body. Bang! A muffled sound of flesh colliding rang out. Xiao Yan's body was like a cannonball as it flew back into the sky. However, Yun Lang's body had already appeared above Xiao Yan, waiting for the final blow. At the critical moment, Xiao Yan's footwork changed once again. His body that was flying back suddenly disappeared, causing the ruthless fist behind him to miss its target. Ha! Yun Lang frowned. He was also surprised that Xiao Yan had disappeared in an instant. Yun Lang narrowed his eyes. An icy light flashed across his eyes. With his body to the side, Yun Lang's sharp eyes scanned the surroundings. At the same time, Luo Jin had already recovered. However, he could not intervene in the battle between the two of them. Hence, he could only quietly wait by the side for an opportunity. In his heart, his opinion of Xiao Yan had also changed again and again in this short period of time. Xiao Yan looked ordinary, but his overall strength was far superior. Xiao Yan had many tricks up his sleeves. Just the sound wave Dou technique alone was enough to make Luo Jin somewhat fearful. The profoundness of the Dou technique was probably close to a human-rank Dou technique. Although his family also had a sound wave Dou technique, he really did not have one that could suppress one's soul and destroy one's body like Xiao Yan's sound wave Dou technique. Seeing Xiao Yan's figure suddenly disappear from the sky, Luo Jin's expression changed once again. What kind of movement skill was this? It actually made Xiao Yan directly disappear from this world. Suddenly, Xiao Yan's clear voice leisurely entered Luo Jin's heart. Brother Luo Jin, you delay Yun Lang here first. I will take the opportunity to sneak into his cave and find the heavenly jade essence before coming out to fight with you. Luo Jin's eyebrows twitched. Xiao Yan had actually already entered the cloud-splitting wolf's cave. However, now was not the time for him to think too much. The reason why Xiao Yan had fought with Yun Lang from the beginning was probably to save some strength for himself later on. With this thought in mind, Luo Jin's impression of Xiao Yan in his heart once again increased. They had only met for 2 days and Xiao Yan was already able to do so much for him. If he did not befriend such a brother, it was likely that he would regret it for the rest of his life. Nodding heavily in his heart, Luo Jin's gaze suddenly became determined. He was an intelligent person and an emotional person. He would only repay Xiao Yan more for his efforts. When Xiao Yan's voice gradually disappeared from Luo Jin's heart, Luo Jin had already moved and charged towards Yun Lang. Today, even if Xiao Yan was unable to find the heavenly jade essence, He would definitely endure until Xiao Yan came out.